The autumn light came slow through the tall windows of the Romano estate that morning, spilling across the long dining table in stripes of pale gold. Outside, Federal Hill was still half asleep. A church bell rang somewhere down the hill. 3 careful notes, then silence. Inside, the house smelled of espresso and warm bread, and something older underneath polished wood. Old money, quiet power. Alessandro Romano sat alone at the head of the table. He was 38 years old, dressed in a dark gray suit without the jacket, his white shirt sleeves rolled once at the cuffs. A newspaper lay open beside his plate. A small silver espresso cup sat near his right hand. In front of him, a plate of sliced bread, a small dish of butter, a jar of fig preserves. He read without expression. He turned a page. He drank. The house around him was very still. A soft sound made him look up. Emma stood at the edge of the dining room, small and thin in a plain gray dress that was slightly too big for her. In her arms she held a doll, a cloth doll with a stitched mouth, and one button eye slightly darker than the other. Her mother had sewn it. The doll's name was Rosie. Emma held Rosie the way other children held prayers. She had a soft cloth in her free hand. She had come to wipe the table. "Good morning, Emma," Alessandro said, without warmth, without coldness. It was simply his voice. "Good morning, sir," she whispered. She stepped closer, small feet almost silent on the marble. She began to wipe the far end of the table, careful, focused, the way her mother had taught her. Alessandro turned another page of the newspaper. Then she stopped. She stood very still for a long moment. Her small chest rose and fell too fast. She looked once toward the hallway. She looked back at him. She took 2 more steps. Now, she was close to his chair. "Sir," she said, her voice thinner than a thread. Alessandro glanced down at her, mildly surprised. "Yes?" She leaned in. He could smell the clean soap on her hair. Her lips came near his ear. "Sir," she whispered, "someone is putting poison in your food." For a moment the room did not move. The light on the table did not move. The steam over the espresso did not move. Then Alessandro laughed once, very softly. A short, almost amused breath. He set down the newspaper. "Emma," he said gently, "that is a strange thing to say in the morning. It's not a joke, sir." Her eyes were wide and very serious. She held Rosie tighter against her chest. "Please, don't eat the bread, the one with butter." He looked at the plate, then at her. "Emma," he said, "more careful now. Why would you say something like that?" "Because I saw." "You saw what?" Her voice dropped even lower. "Last night, sir, in the kitchen. Very late," she swallowed. "Miss Isabella was there. I was getting water for Mama. She didn't see me at first. She had a little white bottle. She crushed something with a spoon. Then she opened the butter and mixed it in. She made the top smooth again, like nothing happened." Alessandro's face did not change, but his hand, resting on the paper, stopped tapping. "Emma." His voice was calm, almost kind. "Miss Isabella is going to be my wife. In 3 months, she will live in this house as my wife. Do you understand what you are saying about her?" "Yes, sir." Her chin trembled once, then held. "You must be mistaken. She may have been taking a headache pill. She saw me, sir." Emma looked at the floor. "I dropped a cup." She turned around. She smiled at me. She knelt down. She said grown-ups have secrets. "She gave me money, sir. A lot of money. She said if I stayed quiet, my mama wouldn't have to work as a maid anymore. She said it was just medicine to help you sleep." Alessandro was very still now. The espresso had stopped steaming. "And what did you say to her?" he asked quietly. "I said okay." Emma's small hand tightened on Rosie. "But I didn't mean it, sir." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the bread, golden crust, a soft yellow smear of butter melting into the warm surface. Ordinary. Perfect. "Emma," he said, "this is a very serious thing. I cannot believe something like this without proof." Emma did not cry. She did not step back. She looked straight up at him, and in her small voice, she said the thing that would change his life. "Then ask her to eat it." "Sir." Alessandro did not answer. Somewhere far down the marble hallway, a door opened. Then, clear and unhurried, came the sharp, familiar rhythm of high heels on stone, slow, confident, coming closer. Emma's eyes went wide. She stepped back, quickly, silently, and picked up her cloth and began to wipe the table again as if nothing had been said. The heels came closer. Alessandro did not look toward the hallway. He looked at the butter, and for the first time in 10 years, at his own breakfast table, in his own house, He felt something cold move through his chest. The heels stopped just outside the dining room. There was a small pause, the kind a woman makes to check herself in a mirror. Then the door pushed open, and Isabella Marchetti walked in. She was already smiling. She wore a soft ivory blouse tucked into a slim black skirt, her dark hair pinned back in a loose knot, one strand left free by the ear. She looked like a painting of a morning. She smelled of jasmine. "There you are," she said warmly, crossing the room. "You're still not eating? Alessandro, you promised me you would stop skipping breakfast." He set the newspaper aside and rose slightly as she approached. She leaned down and kissed his cheek, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "I was reading," he said. "You are always reading." She sat in the chair to his right, folded her hands on the table, and glanced at his plate. "Eat. It's getting cold." Emma had moved to the sideboard now, wiping a silver tray that did not need wiping. She did not look up. Alessandro picked up a slice of the bread. He held it in his hand for a moment, feeling the warmth of it, the give of the crust under his fingers. The butter had melted into it in a soft, uneven pool. "You know," he said quietly, "I was thinking, you are always feeding me. You are always making sure I eat, but I never see you eat with me." Isabella laughed lightly. "Because I'm always half an hour ahead of you. My love, I had yogurt at 7. He turned the slice slowly in his hand. "One bite," he said. "For me, just so I don't sit here alone." He held the bread out toward her. Isabella's smile did not fall, but her eyes for the smallest fraction of a second went still, not surprised. Something else. Something that had to be pushed back down. "Alessandro." She tilted her head, playful. "What are you doing?" "Nothing." He kept the bread extended. "One bite." "I told you. I already ate. One bite," he said again. Her hand moved to her stomach in a small, graceful gesture. "I actually feel a little unsettled this morning. I don't want to be sick before the fitting this afternoon." "You wouldn't want that." "Then a little corner," he said, "the size of a coin." "Alessandro." A soft laugh, but the laugh was thinner now. "Why is this suddenly so important?" "It isn't." His voice was calm, quiet, almost tender. "It's only bread." She looked at the slice in his hand. She did not reach for it. The silence in the room grew. Emma had stopped moving at the sideboard. Somewhere in the walls, the old radiator ticked once, twice. Isabella recovered beautifully. She smiled, wider now, and shook her head. "You are strange this morning. Are you feeling all right? Did you sleep?" She reached out and touched his wrist. Warm fingers, warm rings. "Eat your breakfast. Don't play games with your food like a child." Alessandro looked at her hand on his wrist. He looked at her mouth. He looked at her eyes. Then he set the bread down, very gently, on the edge of the plate. "You're right," he said. "I'm being strange." He leaned toward her and pressed a soft, unhurried kiss to her forehead. She closed her eyes for the length of it, the way she always did. "Go," he said. "You'll be late for your fitting. Are you sure you're all right?" "I'm sure." She rose, smoothing her skirt. She looked at him one more moment, searching his face for something. He gave her nothing but a tired, affectionate smile. "I love you," she said. "I know you do," he answered. Her heels crossed the marble again, this time going away. The front door opened somewhere in the distance, then closed. A moment later, a car started in the drive and rolled slowly out through the iron gate. Alessandro did not move. He looked at the plate, at the bread, at the butter, glistening softly under the autumn light. Then he took the slice, wrapped it in a linen napkin, and slid it, along with the little dish of butter, into an empty ceramic bowl he pulled from the sideboard. He closed the lid. He picked up his phone. "Marco," he said quietly, when the line clicked open. "Come to the house. Now, bring me the security footage from last night. And a lab kit." A pause. Quietly, he set the phone face down on the newspaper. He stood for a long moment with his hand resting on the closed bowl, feeling the weight of what it held. Then he turned. Emma stood at the far end of the room, absolutely still, her cloth forgotten in her hand. Her eyes were huge, her face was pale, and in her small arms, held so tight that the seams strained, Rosie was trembling because the little hands that held her were trembling too. She had heard every word. The security room was on the lowest floor of the estate, behind a plain oak door that most guests believed was a wine cellar. Only 3 men in the world knew what was really behind it. Alessandro was one. Marco Bianchi was another. It was almost midnight when they went down together. Marco was 42, broad in the shoulders, gray already spreading at his temples. He had served Alessandro's father for 12 years and Alessandro for the 10 years since the funeral. He rarely spoke unless spoken to. He had come from across the city within 30 minutes of the call, a black case in one hand, a leather folder in the other. He set both on the metal desk. He did not ask any questions. Alessandro sat down in front of the largest monitor. Marco stood behind him. "Kitchen," Alessandro said. "Camera 4. Last night. Start at midnight." Marco reached over his shoulder and worked the console. The screen filled with the empty kitchen, the long marble island, the pale under-cabinet lights, the copper pans hanging in a row. Timestamp in the corner, 1200 hours, 12:15, 12:30. Nothing moved. At 12:42, the kitchen door opened. Alessandro leaned forward without meaning to. Isabella stepped in wearing a long black silk robe, belted at the waist, her hair loose over her shoulders. She was barefoot. She carried a small handbag by its short strap, the way a woman carries a purse in her own home when she does not want to be seen using pockets. She did not turn on the ceiling light. She used only the small lamp above the stove. She looked once toward the hallway. She listened. Then she moved to the counter. From the little bag, she took out a small white bottle. She opened it, shook 2 tablets into her palm, then a third. She set them on the marble. She took a spoon from the drawer, turned it over, and pressed the round back of it down onto the tablets. Once, twice, a slow, careful grinding motion, until the pills became a fine, chalky powder. Marco's jaw tightened. Isabella slid the powder to the edge of the counter with the flat of the spoon. Then she opened the refrigerator, took out the small porcelain butter dish, and set it beside her. She lifted the lid. She tipped the powder in. With the spoon, she folded it under, mixing, working it into the soft yellow. Then, with the back of the spoon, she smoothed the surface. Long, patient strokes. She turned the dish slightly, checked the surface from another angle, smoothed it again. When she was done, the butter looked exactly as it had before, untouched, ordinary. She closed the lid. She put the dish back in the refrigerator. She rinsed the spoon under a thin ribbon of water, dried it, and returned it to the drawer. She wiped the counter with a paper towel and folded the towel and put it in her handbag. She put the bottle back in the handbag. She turned off the stove lamp. She left the kitchen. The screen went dark and still. Neither man spoke. "Again," Alessandro said quietly. Marco rewound. They watched it a second time. The care of it. That was what stayed with him. Not the fact of the pills. The care. The angle of the spoon. The final glance at the butter. Checking her own work. The small, satisfied breath she let out before she closed the dish. The steadiness of a woman who had done this before, or had rehearsed it many times in her mind. "Again," Alessandro said. They watched it a third time. When it was finished, Alessandro sat back very slowly in the chair. He drew a long, quiet breath through his nose. His right hand went to the inside pocket of his jacket, and it took out a small object, and it closed around it. It was a pocket watch. Silver, worn at the edges. A fine engraving of the Romano family cross on the back. His father's. His father had been wearing it the night he died. Alessandro turned the watch once in his palm, then held it flat. He did not open it. He did not need to. He knew what was inside the small photograph of his parents, taken on the steps of the church the day they were married. For a moment he was not in the security room. He was 18 years old, standing in the rain on a street in North Providence, holding his father's body in his arms. The blood on the pavement, the pocket watch still ticking in the ruined jacket, the 2 shots from the black car that had come out of nowhere, and the driver he had never been able to identify, and the men his father had trusted who could not, or would not, tell him who had sent them. 10 years. 10 years of running the family clean, running it careful, keeping the peace. 10 years of trying to be a different kind of Romano than his father had been. 10 years of believing the war was over, and now, on his own breakfast table, in his own butter, in the hands of the woman he had chosen to make his wife, the war was back. Marco spoke for the first time. "Boss," he said, very low. "Who else has been in that kitchen at night this week?" "No one," Alessandro said. His voice was calm. It frightened Marco more than shouting. "Only Sophia, before 6. Only the cook, before 8. Only Emma, once, to fetch water." Marco nodded slowly. "Then it is only her. It is only her." Alessandro closed his hand around the watch until his knuckles went white. "But it is not only her plan." Marco's eyes moved to his face. "A woman like Isabella," Alessandro said, still looking at the dark screen, "does not decide, on her own, to marry a man like me, and to kill a man like me. Someone put her in this house, Someone taught her how to grind a pill so slowly. He set the watch on the desk, gently, as if it were the only fragile thing in the world. I want to know who. I'll start tonight. Start with her phone. Start with her money. Start with her family in Boston. I want everything by Sunday. Yes, boss. The screen was black. The security room hummed with its small electric sound. Alessandro reached out and touched the edge of the pocket watch with one finger, the way a man touches a rosary he no longer prays to. Marco's phone rang in his coat. He pulled it out, looked at the screen. His face changed. It's the lab, he said. Alessandro did not move. Marco lifted the phone to his ear. Yes. He listened. His eyes rose slowly to Alessandro's. Say that again, he said into the phone. Say it in English, slowly. Marco listened for another 20 seconds. He did not interrupt. When he finally lowered the phone, he did not put it away. He held it flat in his hand as if it had become something heavier than a phone. Digitalis, he said, a low, refined dose. The lab man says it is the kind used for weak hearts. In a healthy man, over weeks, in small amounts, it slows the pulse. Then, it weakens the muscle. Then, the heart stops. He said in an autopsy, without suspicion, without a test for this specific compound, it will look exactly like a natural cardiac arrest. Alessandro was silent. He said, Marco went on, quieter. She chose well. A man your age. Long hours. Family history. That last word hung in the room. Family history. Alessandro's father had not died of a heart attack. Alessandro's father had died of 2 bullets in a rainstorm. But the world did not know that. The paper had written it as a heart episode at the wheel. The doctors had signed what they had been paid to sign. That was the story on record. That was the story Isabella would have read. She had chosen a poison that matched a lie. So she has been given the medical file, Alessandro said. Yes, boss. So she is not working from love, and she is not working from money alone. Someone gave her the file. Someone told her what death to write. Yes, boss. Alessandro closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them and stood. Go, he said. Start with the phone. Start with the money. I want you back here at 7 with something. Marco nodded once, gathered his case, and left through the side stair without a sound. Alessandro remained. He picked up the silver pocket watch from the desk. He held it against his chest, briefly, and then slid it back into the inside pocket of his jacket, over his heart. He went upstairs the long way. The house was very quiet at this hour. His own footsteps on the marble were the only sound. He passed the dining room, dark now, the table cleared. He passed the wide staircase that led to his own wing. He did not go up. He walked instead toward the back of the house, through a plain door most guests did not notice, and into the narrow hallway that led to the servants' quarters. The hallway smelled faintly of clean linen and lemon soap. Emma's room was the last on the right. A thin yellow line glowed under the door. She was still awake. He stopped outside for a moment and listened. He could hear the small sound of a child breathing quietly, and, once, the soft creak of a bed spring. He knocked with one knuckle, very lightly. Emma, he said, low. It's me. There was silence. Then the shuffle of small feet. The door opened a crack. One large brown eye looked out at him, and then the door opened a little more. She was in a white nightgown 2 sizes too big, her hair loose. She held Rosie against her stomach with both arms. Sir, she whispered. She looked past him quickly, checking the hallway. May I come in for a minute? She nodded and stepped back. The room was very small. A narrow bed against the wall, a chair, a shelf with 3 books, a lamp with a paper shade, her mother's Bible on the table by the bed, a drawing pinned to the wall, a house with a sun over it, drawn in crayon. Alessandro did not sit on the bed. He did not want to fill the room with his sighs. Instead, he knelt. He went down slowly onto one knee, in his dark suit, in that small, clean room, and brought his face level with hers. Emma, he said quietly, you told me the truth this morning. I did not believe you at first. I want you to hear me say this. I believe you now. Her lower lip trembled once. She did not cry. Yes, sir, she whispered. I have to ask you something, and it is a very grown-up question. Can you answer a grown-up question? She nodded. Are you afraid of her? Emma looked down at Rosie for a long moment. Then she looked up. A little, she said. That is a brave answer. He drew a slow breath. Being afraid is not the wrong thing. Being afraid and still telling the truth, that is the right thing. You did the right thing. He reached into the pocket of his jacket and took out a small, flat, silver object about the size of a thimble. It had a tiny hole in one side and a small ring on the other. "Do you know what this is?" She shook her head. "It's a whistle, but it is not a normal whistle. When you blow into it, you cannot hear anything, but my men can hear it, wherever I am in the city, and there is a little light inside it that tells me where you are, so I can come find you." Her eyes widened. "I want you to keep it," he said, "but I don't want anyone to see it, not even your mama. So I am going to give it a hiding place." He held out his hand for Rosie. Emma hesitated. Rosie was the most important thing she owned. Then she looked at his face, and she gave the doll over gently, with both hands, as if handing him a sleeping baby. Alessandro turned Rosie in his lap. He found the seam along her back where the stitches were a little larger than the others, the place her mother would have used to stuff her with cotton. With careful fingers, he loosened 3 stitches, just enough. He tucked the small silver whistle deep inside, past the cotton, so nothing pressed against the fabric from outside. Then he pressed the seam closed. It looked exactly as it had before. He handed Rosie back to her. "There," he said. "Now she is even braver than she was before." Emma held Rosie tight. "If you are ever in danger, Emma, any danger at all, at any hour you find a quiet place, and you blow through her, right here." He touched the small spot on Rosie's back, where the whistle now rested. "It only takes 1 breath. And I will come, I promise you. Wherever I am, I will come." "Yes, sir," she whispered. He looked at her for a moment longer, at the small, serious face, at the doll, at the too big nightgown, and something moved in his chest that he had not felt in a long time. He did not know the name of it yet. He would learn it later. He rose to his feet. Behind him, a door creaked softly. He turned. Sophia Bennett was standing at the entrance of the little side room where she slept, a shawl pulled hastily over her nightdress, one hand still on the doorframe. Her long brown hair was loose over her shoulder. She was 29, tired around the eyes from a life of working 2 shifts, and she was staring at the scene in front of her with the still, careful stare of a mother who does not yet know what she is seeing. Her employer, the most powerful man in Federal Hill, on his knee, in her daughter's bedroom, at midnight. For a long second, no one spoke. Sophia's eyes moved from Alessandro, to Emma, to the doll pressed against her daughter's chest, and back to Alessandro. She did not step forward. She did not step back. She was very still in the way that mothers become still when they cannot yet tell what kind of danger they are looking at. "Sir," she said. Her voice was low, controlled, careful. "Is everything all right?" Alessandro rose fully to his feet. He kept his hands loose at his sides so she could see them. "Sophia," he said gently, "I apologize for the hour." Her hand tightened on the doorframe. "Emma had a nightmare last night," he said. "She came down looking for her mother earlier. My guards saw her in the hallway and brought her back up here quietly, so as not to wake you. She was still very shaken. I heard about it after the fact. I only came to make sure she was all right before I went to bed." Sophia's eyes moved to Emma. Emma understood. 6 years old, and she understood. She held Rosie a little tighter and looked at her mother with the round, tired eyes of a child who had not slept well. "I had a bad dream, Mama," she whispered. "About a dog." Sophia let out a very small breath. Some of the tightness left her shoulders. Not all of it. "I told her a story," Alessandro said, "about my mother's rose bush. It is not a very good story, but it was long enough that I think she is ready to sleep now." Sophia looked at him for another long moment. He met her eyes without moving. She was not a stupid woman. He could see her taking in the suit, the hour, the doll, her daughter's face. She was not entirely persuaded, but she was, above all things, a woman who worked in a house that was not hers, for a man who could send her away with 1 sentence. And so she made the choice a woman like her had to make. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. "That was kind of you. Go back to sleep, Sophia." He gave her a small, tired smile. "I am sorry we disturbed you." He touched the top of Emma's head once, very gently, with 2 fingers, and he stepped out of the small room. In the hallway, he stopped once. He put his hand flat against the wall and closed his eyes for a single breath. Then he walked on. Morning came pale and cold. Alessandro rose before 6. He dressed with care, a dark suit, no tie yet, his father's pocket watch tucked into the inside pocket, over his heart. He came down the front stairs slowly, deliberately loud, so that anyone in the kitchen would hear him coming and would have time to arrange their face. Then, at the last turn of the stair, he stopped. Voices, low, from the kitchen. He did not go on. He stepped soundlessly into the small side hallway that ran alongside the kitchen wall, the servants' passage, where deliveries came in. From there, through the half-open service door, he could see a slice of the kitchen, the end of the counter, half of Emma's small back, and, standing over her, Isabella. Isabella was still in her morning robe, ivory silk this time, the belt tied loosely. Her hair was pinned up. She held a coffee cup in one hand. In the other, held down by her side, was a thick white envelope. "Emma, sweetheart." Her voice was gentle, warm, like a hand smoothing a child's hair. "Come here. Come stand with me a moment." Emma came. Alessandro could see her small shoulders were tight. "You know," Isabella said, "I have been thinking about you. All night, I have been thinking about you." Emma said nothing. "You are a very smart girl. I could tell that the very first day you came into this house with your mother. Some children are only pretty. Some children are only quiet. But you see things. You understand things that children shouldn't understand. Do you know how rare that is?" Emma looked at the floor. "I want to give you something." Isabella lifted the envelope. "This is for you. I want you to take it up to your room and hide it in a place your mama will not find. Not because we are doing anything wrong, but because grown-ups have secrets, and this is one of ours. You remember what I told you?" "Yes, ma'am," Emma whispered. "Good girl." She pressed the envelope into Emma's small hand and closed the child's fingers around it. It was thick. Alessandro could see how her little wrist tilted under the weight. "You are a smart girl," Isabella said softly, almost lovingly. "And smart girls stay quiet. You know that, don't you?" "Yes, ma'am." Isabella leaned down. Her voice dropped. It became a lower note, the same voice, but with the warmth taken out of it, the way a violin string sounds when you... "Do you understand? A very sad thing. Your mama works so hard. She is so tired every night. If she lost this job, if she could not find another one, the two of you would have to leave this house and this city, and I don't know where you would go. That would break my heart. That would break your mama's heart too." She smiled. "So we will stay quiet. Won't we, Emma?" Emma bit down on her lower lip. Her small chin trembled once. She nodded. Isabella straightened up. She patted the top of Emma's head, exactly the way a woman pats a small, well-trained dog. Then she smiled a real smile, satisfied, pleased with her own morning's work, and she turned to the coffee pot on the counter, humming softly, some old song from a wedding no one else remembered. Alessandro did not move from the shadow of the service door. He stood very still. His right hand had already gone, on its own, to the inside pocket of his jacket. His fingers had closed around the silver pocket watch of his father. He was not aware of it at first. He only became aware when he felt the pain, the small, clean pain of the engraved cross pressing into his palm. He looked down. His hand was closed so tight around the watch that his knuckles were white. The tendons in his wrist were standing out like cords. He could feel his pulse in his fingertips. 10 years ago, a car had come out of the rain, and a man he had loved had died on the pavement, and an 18-year-old boy had promised himself two things: that he would find who did it, and that he would never again let harm come to anyone in his house through a door he had opened himself. He had opened this door. He had walked her through it. He had put a ring on her finger. In the kitchen, Isabella was humming. Emma stood very small beside the counter, still holding the envelope, her eyes fixed on the floor. Alessandro released a slow, silent breath. The decision formed in him fully, without noise, the way a stone forms in the deep dark of a river. It was not anger. Anger was too small a word. It was something colder, older, more patient. He would let her think she was winning. He would let her write the whole story. And then, at the last page, he would tear the book in half in front of her. He unclenched his hand slowly. On the silver back of the pocket watch, faint red lines had been pressed into his palm in the shape of his father's cross. He looked at it for a long moment. Then, silently, he turned and walked back the way he had come. The play began that same afternoon. Alessandro made the first call from the study, with the door left open a hand's width. He knew Isabella was in the sitting room across the hall, arranging flowers she did not care about. He knew her ears had been sharpened for him since dawn. He sat behind the wide walnut desk, put his voice at a lower, thinner pitch than his own, and dialed the private line of Dr. Enzo Ferrante, cardiologist, family friend of the Romanos since Alessandro was 12. "Enzo," he said, "it's me. I need to see you. Privately." There was a pause on the other end. Enzo Ferrante was a careful man. He waited. "My chest has not felt right for 2 days," Alessandro went on, still in that thinned, tired voice. "It comes and it goes. Last night I woke up twice. I don't want anyone to know. I don't want anyone to make a fuss. Can you fit me in tomorrow morning? Without a chart, without a nurse." Another pause. Then Enzo, who had understood the tone completely, said, "Come at 8. Use the back door. Thank you, old friend." Alessandro hung up. He stayed with his hand on the phone a moment longer than he needed to. In the sitting room across the hall, the small sound of scissors clipping a stem had stopped. He rose, closed the study door behind him with a careful, slightly tired push, and walked to the sitting room. He paused in the doorway. He allowed his shoulders to drop half an inch. Isabella looked up. She held a white rose in one hand and the scissors in the other. Her face went through a beautiful, well-practiced sequence surprise, then concern, then softness. "Alessandro," she set the scissors down. "You look pale. It's nothing. You don't look like nothing." He gave her a tired, brave smile. "I have not slept well. That's all." She crossed the room and put both hands on his chest, one over the other, right where his father's watch rested inside the jacket. He could feel her rings through the wool. "Don't lie to me," she said softly. "You are working too hard. Look at you. You are gray. I am going to see Enzo tomorrow, just to be careful. Don't make a face like that. It is nothing." "Enzo?" A small, delicate frown between her brows. "For what?" "My chest." He hesitated, as if he had not wanted to say it. "I had a moment last night. It passed, but I promised myself I would stop being foolish about these things." Her fingers curled against his lapel. Her lips shaped the words, "my love," and did not say them. Her eyes did the work instead, wide, wet at the edges, full of exactly the right amount of fear, but under the fear, for the smallest fraction of a second, before she remembered to smooth it away, something else moved, a little brightness, a little lift at the corner of her mouth, the look of a woman who had heard the first small crack in the ice she had been waiting on all winter. He saw it. He gave no sign that he had. "Come, sit," she said. "Let me get you something." "I will sit for a moment." He walked to the armchair by the window. He walked slowly, not obviously slowly, just half a breath slower than his real body wanted. He lowered himself into the chair with one hand braced on the armrest. He allowed a small, private exhale, the kind a man makes when a chair receives more weight than it should. "See," she said, hovering. "See how tired you are. Enough. Sit with me. Talk about the wedding. Talk about anything else." She brought him tea. He sipped it slowly. He did not finish it. At dinner that night, he ate only half of what was on his plate. He set his fork down carefully. He complimented the sauce and refused a second serving. He drank water instead of wine. Twice, in the middle of a sentence, his hand rose absently to the center of his chest, pressed lightly for 2 seconds, and dropped again, as if he did not notice he had done it. Isabella noticed each time. Marco noticed too, from his post by the far wall. Marco's face did not change. He had been briefed at 4 o'clock that afternoon. He understood the shape of the theater now. He would play his own small role, the loyal servant who watched his boss too closely, who exchanged one worried glance with Isabella when the boss winced, who said nothing but who let his eyes do the worrying. Isabella caught his glance across the table. She held it a fraction of a second longer than an innocent woman would have. She was collecting evidence, too. Evidence of a sick man. Alessandro let her collect it. He went to bed early. He said his back hurt. He kissed Isabella on the forehead, not the mouth, and told her to sleep in the guest suite tonight because he did not want to keep her awake if he tossed and turned. She protested. Of course. She insisted, sweetly, that she wanted to be near him. He insisted, more sweetly, that he needed rest. She kissed his hand and let him go. He went to his room. He closed the door. He waited. 10 minutes, 20, half an hour. Then he opened the door soundlessly, slipped into the servant's passage in his stocking feet, and moved through the dark house the way he had moved through it as a boy, on nights when he had wanted to spy on his father's card games. He came out at the small terrace door that opened onto the side garden. He did not step outside. He stopped just inside the door, in the dark. He put his ear to the small crack where the hinge was. The garden was lit only by the low-path lamps. Somewhere out in the boxwood, a woman was walking slowly on the gravel. The soft crunch of a heel, a pause, another step, and a voice, low, held close to the phone, speaking in Italian. He could not catch most of it. The gravel took the sound. The wind through the elms took the rest. But he caught, very clearly, 3 words at the end of a sentence, in her own careful, cultured Italian. Sooner than expected, there was a pause. She listened. Then, more softly, One more word, almost a purr. Benet. The line went dead. Her heels turned on the gravel. Alessandro drew back from the door into the dark and stood very still against the wall as her steps came closer, passed on the other side of the wood, and moved away toward the terrace stairs. In his chest, exactly where he had spent all day pretending to feel a false pain, he now felt a real one, small, cold, precise. The play had begun, and the audience was already writing the ending she wanted. Marco came into the study the next evening carrying a plain manila folder and a small black case. He set both on the desk without ceremony, took the chair across from Alessandro, and did not speak until Alessandro nodded once. "Boss, I have the first pass. Show me." Marco opened the folder. Inside were printed pages, some with columns of numbers, some with account names blacked out at the top, and a few grainy photographs of documents he should not have been able to obtain in 2 days. He had obtained them anyway. That was why he was Marco. 3 things, Marco said. He laid the pages out in the order of his findings. 1. 3 months ago, a private account was opened at a bank in the Cayman Islands under Isabella Marchetti's legal name. Initial deposit, $50,000, wired from a domestic account she does not touch on her personal statements. Since then, 2 more deposits, each $100,000. The account is dormant on paper. She has not withdrawn a single dollar. Alessandro looked at the numbers. Waiting, Marco agreed. She does not want to touch it until she has a reason the money can explain itself. A grieving widow, an insurance settlement, something clean. 2. Marco tapped the next page. 2. Life insurance. $8 million on your life. Policy issued 4 months ago through an agent in Boston. Beneficiary, Isabella Marchetti, spouse-to-be. The policy has a rider that pays out on natural causes, including cardiac events, provided the death occurs after the marriage is legally registered. Alessandro did not move. 8, he said quietly. 8, boss. That is a great deal of trust to put in a man's heart. It is a great deal of trust to put in a poison, boss. Alessandro almost smiled. There was no warmth in it. 3. Marco slid the 3rd page forward. This one was different. It had a company name at the top, and a mailing address, and a corporate registration number, and very little else. 3. She receives a steady wire transfer, $22,000 a month, from a shell called Bay Harbor Consulting, registered in Delaware. No physical office, no employees on record, no product, no service, no invoices. Signed on paper by a lawyer in Providence who signs paper for 200 companies. He is a placeholder. The real owner is somewhere behind 3 layers of corporate curtain. Can you get through the curtain? Yes, boss. It will take time. Maybe a week. Maybe 2. You have a week. Yes, boss. Alessandro read the 3 pages again, slowly. He read the numbers the way a man reads a diagnosis in his own hand. When he looked up, his face was calm. She did not do this alone. No, boss. A woman like Isabella can crush a pill. She cannot open an offshore account and buy an $8 million life policy and register a shell company across 3 states in the same season. Someone gave her the map. Someone gave her the map, Marco echoed. Alessandro closed the folder. What is in the case? Marco opened it. Inside, resting on gray foam, were 2 very small, very expensive listening devices, each no larger than a shirt button, and a slim black receiver with a single earpiece. 2 mics, Marco said. One I already placed. In her dressing room, inside the frame of the standing mirror. At the joint where the wood meets the glass. She will not find it unless she takes the mirror apart. The second is here for you, in case you want a room of your own. The receiver is line of sight to the estate. Anywhere in the main house, you will hear her. How long does the battery hold? 9 days. On a low setting. 16 days. On the very low setting I set. Every time she speaks, it wakes and records. When the room is silent, it sleeps. And I hear it live? Live. Or later. You choose. It records to a private server. Only the 2 of us have the key. Alessandro looked at the small button on the gray foam. He picked it up between his thumb and finger. He held it up to the lamp on the desk and turned it slowly, the way another man might have inspected a diamond. Good, he said. Boss. Marco hesitated. That in itself was rare. There is a 4th thing. Speak. I checked the cameras from the front gate. Over the last 3 months, 3 separate cars have driven slowly past the estate at odd hours. Different plates. All 3 plates trace back to Shell Rentals. On 4 occasions, the same car circled the block twice before leaving. Alessandro's eyes did not move. Someone is watching this house. Yes, boss. Someone who does not trust her to do the job alone. That is what I would say, boss. Continue. Do not confront them. I want to know how many, and when they come. Yes, boss. Marco closed the case, and rose. At the door he paused, one hand on the frame, and looked back. Boss. May I say one thing not from an employee, but from a man? Alessandro nodded once. Do not let this eat you. Not yet. You will need a clean head. Alessandro looked at him for a long moment. Thank you, Marco. Marco left. Alessandro sat with the receiver in front of him for a long time. He did not put on the earpiece. He wanted to. He forced himself not to. He worked instead. He signed papers. He read a report on a shipping contract. He returned a call to a state senator about a charity ball. He behaved like a man whose life had not been split in half 3 days ago at a breakfast table. At 11:30, the house went quiet. He turned the reading lamp low. He drew the curtain. He put the earpiece in. For a long time he heard nothing. The soft, empty hush of an unoccupied room. The distant tick of the grandfather clock in the hall 2 floors below, coming through the walls. The wind moving in the elms outside. Then, at 11:49, a door opened somewhere in the recording. Heels on the wood, a drawer sliding, the soft sound of jewelry being set down on a lacquer tray, piece by piece. Earrings, bracelet. Ring no, not the ring. The ring stayed on. A long pause. The rustle of silk against silk. She was undressing. Then, very close to the mirror, close enough for the microphone to catch the small dry click of her lips parting, she spoke, in low Italian, to whoever was on the other end of the phone she must have set on the vanity. Amore, she said softly. A man's voice answered. Low, warm, older than Alessandro's. It was a voice that expected to be obeyed, but that had chosen, for this woman, to be gentle instead. Cara mia, the voice said. Sei sicura che non sospetta? My darling, are you sure he does not suspect? Alessandro's fingers closed slowly on the arm of the chair. He listened to the voice again in his head. He tested it against every voice he had known in his father's world, in his own world, in the world under his world. The accent was northern Italian, educated, patient. There was a rasp in it, at the low end, the kind of rasp a man earns from decades of cigars. He did not know it, not yet, but somewhere, in a life he had not yet fully walked back through, that voice belonged to a face, and the face belonged to a name, and the name, when he finally found it, was going to answer for every single thing that had happened in this house. Emma became, in the days that followed, the smallest and quietest spy in Providence. No one told her she was a spy, no one used the word, but she had understood, from the moment Alessandro had knelt down in her bedroom, that she was being asked to keep something, and Emma, who had lost her father before she was old enough to remember his face, and who had watched her mother work 3 jobs to keep them fed, understood how to keep things. She kept the envelope hidden under a loose floorboard she had discovered under her bed. She did not touch the money. She did not open it a second time. She kept the whistle in Rosie's back, and she kept her small, wide, dark eyes down whenever Isabella walked into a room. Isabella liked that. Isabella liked a girl who kept her eyes down. Come here, sweet thing, she would say, from the sofa in the sunroom. Bring me my slippers. Emma would bring the slippers. Come here, little one. Take these cups to the kitchen. Emma would take the cups. Come sit for a moment. You are so serious. Are you happy in this house? Yes? Good. Emma would sit for a moment, and with every small errand, with every small trip past the sitting room and the sunroom and the little writing desk in the alcove where Isabella liked to answer her mail, Emma would listen. She had a child's memory. She could not read Italian and she could not spell what she heard, but she remembered the shape of words. She remembered when a voice changed. She remembered names. Twice a day, before breakfast and after dinner, she would go find Alessandro, not in the study, where anyone might see, in the small back corridor that led past the pantry, or by the kitchen garden door where the deliveries came. He would meet her there for a minute, no more. He would kneel to her level. She would tell him what she had heard. She talked on the phone in the sunroom, Emma said one morning, holding Rosie under one arm. Not Italian, English. She said Sunday. She said, St. Peter's, 6 o'clock, the candle chapel. Alessandro nodded slowly. Anything else? She said. Wear the gray coat, not the black one. She said. It is safer. Good girl. She said it soft, like when she talks to you. Something passed across Alessandro's face that Emma did not have a name for. He touched her cheek once with the back of his knuckle. Emma, you have done a very brave thing again. Now I want you to do a boring thing. For the next 2 days, you will not go near her. Do not bring her slippers. Do not bring her cups. If she calls you, you will say your mama needs you. Do you understand? Yes, sir. I do not want her to look at you and start counting. Yes, sir. He straightened, glanced down the corridor, and slipped a small paper-wrapped piece of chocolate into her hand. Then he was gone. Marco received his orders that evening in the study. Alessandro spoke without looking up from the map of Federal Hill spread across his desk. St. Peter's. Sunday, 6 o'clock. The Candle Chapel. She is meeting someone. I want to know who. Camera only. Do not be seen. Do not be heard. I do not want him spooked, and I do not want her spooked. Understood. Boss. Take Rocco. He knows the church. His mother lit candles there every Sunday for 30 years. He can move through the side aisle without being marked. Yes, boss. Long lens. 2 angles if you can. I want his face. Yes, boss. Marco paused at the door. Boss, may I ask, do we already suspect a name? Alessandro looked up. I have my suspicions, he said quietly. I want to be wrong. Marco understood. He left. Sunday came slow and gray. The bells of St. Peter's rang for the evening. Mass at 5:30. Marco and Rocco were already inside by 5. They had come separately. They had lit their candles like any other men and sat in different pews. Rocco knelt in the far right side aisle, near a column, where the long shadow of St. Michael fell across the tile. Marco sat 2 rows behind, on the aisle, with his coat folded across his lap and the small camera hidden inside the fold. At 6:02, a woman in a gray coat walked in through the side door. She kept her head bent under a scarf. She lit a candle at the small iron rack. She did not cross herself. She moved to the little chapel at the far side, where the candles burned in red glass in front of the statue of the Virgin, and she stood there, alone, for 4 minutes. At 6:06, a second figure entered from the same side door. A man, tall, broad in the shoulder, iron gray hair combed back, a charcoal overcoat, well cut, expensive, but not showy. He walked with the easy, unhurried step of a man who had not been in a hurry in 20 years. He came to stand beside her. He did not touch her. He lit his own candle. He looked at the Virgin as if he had come to pray. His lips moved once. Whatever he said to her, he said very low, very close, without turning his head. The candlelight caught the side of his face, the high brow, the heavy line of the jaw, the old, careful mouth. In the fold of his coat, Marco's finger pressed the shutter. Silently, once, twice, 3 times. He shifted a half-inch to the right and pressed it again. By 6:07, the man was gone. By 6:09, so was she. Marco waited for the mass to end. He walked out with the crowd. He did not look at Rocco. Rocco did not look at him. By 7:30, he was in the study. He laid 3 photographs on the desk in front of Alessandro. He did not speak. He knew better than to speak. Alessandro looked at the first photograph. For a long moment, his face did not change. His hand did not move. His eyes did not blink. Then something happened inside him that no one else in the room could see. The blood in his veins went cold. Not slowly, all at once, as if a door had been opened in a house he had thought was warm, and a wind had come in from a winter he had believed was over. He knew that face. He had grown up hearing that name at his father's table, spoken with the low, careful tone reserved for men who could not be crossed lightly. He had seen that face at the funeral, 10 years ago, standing 3 rows back among the mourners, gloved hand resting on the head of a walking cane, mouth pressed into a shape that had passed for grief. He had shaken that hand once, at 20, at a peace table meeting in Boston he had been ordered to attend and to smile through, the rasp in the voice on the tape, the northern Italian accent, the patience of a man who had waited for decades. Alessandro reached out and turned the photograph slowly under the lamp, as if that could change what was in it. It did not. The face in the shadow of the Virgin only looked back at him and, for the first time in 10 years, seemed to smile. "Boss?" Marco said, very softly. "Do you know him?" Alessandro did not answer at first. He picked up the pocket watch from where it sat on the desk beside him, held it in his palm, and closed his fingers around it until he could feel his own pulse against the silver. "Yes," he said quietly. "I know him." Alessandro set the photograph down. He did it slowly, the way a man sets down a loaded weapon on a table between friends. Then he rose from the desk and walked to the sideboard, where a decanter of grappa stood next to 2 crystal glasses. He poured 1 glass. He did not pour a second. He came back and set the glass in front of Marco. "Drink," he said, "boss. Drink. You will need it for what I am going to tell you." Marco lifted the glass, tipped it back, and swallowed once. Alessandro sat back down. He did not touch the photograph again. He did not need to. The face in it had already been carved somewhere behind his ribs. "His name is Vittorio Moretti," he said. "He is 47 years old. He runs New Haven, and everything that flows out of the port there, and half of what moves along Interstate 95 between New York and Boston. He does not touch drugs on paper. He touches everything on paper that touches drugs on the water. He owns 2 restaurants, a marina, a cement company, and a judge." Marco's face was very still. "I have heard the name, boss. Everyone in our world has heard the name. Very few people have said it out loud in this house in 10 years. There is a reason." He drew a breath. It was steady. He had trained it to be steady long ago. "My father and Vittorio Moretti's father sat at the same table in 1967, in Boston, when the 6 families of New England agreed to a peace. They shook hands. They embraced. They ate from the same plate. The peace held for 30 years. Then it did not. Vittorio's father died in bed in 98, and Vittorio took the chair. He was 35 years old, and he was hungry, and he did not want a peace. He wanted the ports, all of them, Providence included." Marco nodded slowly. He knew some of this. Every soldier in the family knew some of this, but he had never heard Alessandro speak it aloud. He listened. "My father would not sell Providence. My father would not lease it, would not share it, would not lay a single one of Vittorio's boats at our docks. There were meetings, 2 of them, that I sat in as a boy, at 17, at 18, because my father wanted me to see how men talk to each other when they are already deciding to kill each other. At the second meeting, Vittorio smiled at me across the table. He asked me how school was going. He said I looked like my mother." Alessandro's hand tightened once on the arm of the chair. Then he made it loosen. 3 months later, my father was driving home from a christening in Cranston in the rain. 2 cars came out of a side street. 2 shots. The car that fired the shots was never found. The driver of the second car was found floating in the Providence River 11 days later with his hands cut off, so we could not ask him anything, and we could not identify him." Marco was silent. "I could not prove it," Alessandro said. "I could not prove any of it. There was no witness. There was no gun. There was no name in a ledger. The state closed it as a possible cardiac event at the wheel because Enzo Ferrante, God bless him, would not sign a paper that lied. But the papers on record said what the papers on record needed to say." Marco's throat moved. "And Vittorio?" "Vittorio came to the funeral. 3rd row, on the left. He wore black. He wore a black glove on his right hand because he had," he said, "cut it on a wine bottle the week before." He shook my hand at the reception. He held it for a moment too long. He said, "Your father was a great man. If ever, in this new time, you need counsel from an older brother, you know where to find me." Marco's eyes closed for a moment. "I was 18 years old," Alessandro said. "I was a boy." I looked into his eyes and I understood 2 things. I understood that he had killed my father, and I understood that if I said one word about it that night, without proof, without soldiers, without a plan, I would be dead by morning. So I said, "Thank you, Don Moretti," and I let him kiss me on both cheeks in front of 200 witnesses. And I went home and I did not sleep for 3 days. He paused. "For 10 years, he said, I have run this family, as if the peace still held. I have kept our men out of New Haven. I have not touched his docks. I have not sent one boat into his water. He has done the same in Providence. On paper, we are friends. We send Christmas baskets. We attend each other's christenings. His daughter was married at St. Peter's 2 years ago, and I stood in the church and I smiled, and I kissed her cheek, and I gave her an envelope." Marco set the empty grappa glass down very carefully. "And now, boss," he said quietly, "his hand is in your butter." "His hand is in my butter," Alessandro said. "His hand has been in my house since the day she walked into it." He picked up the photograph and looked at it one more time. Not at Vittorio, at Isabella, half-turned, in the candlelight, listening to whatever old, gentle thing Vittorio was murmuring into the side of her scarf. She was smiling faintly. She was smiling the way a woman smiles at a man she has loved for a long time. She is not the head of this, Marco. She is the knife, he is the hand. She was placed. She was trained. She was walked to my door by a man who has been waiting 10 years for me to open it. And the $8 million on the policy? Insurance for both of them. If the poison had worked, she would have taken it, married my ghost, been my widow for a decent mourning year, and quietly delivered every Romano dock, warehouse, and account into Vittorio's hands, dressed as a merger. No war, no bullets, no headlines. Providence to New Haven, in a black dress, with a signature. Madre di Dio. He is a patient man, Alessandro said. 10 years is nothing to him. He rose. Marco rose with him. Marco. Nobody in this house says his name out loud yet. Not to the men, not to Rocco, not even to Enzo. From this moment we are still a family being poisoned by a bride. We are not yet a family at war with New Haven. Do you understand? Yes, boss. Go. Rest for 2 hours. Then start on Bay Harbor Consulting again. I want the paper trail from Vittorio to that shell before Wednesday. Yes, boss. Marco left. The door closed softly. Alessandro did not sit back down. He walked across the study, past the desk, past the low green lamp, to the far wall where the tall painting hung between the 2 bookcases. The portrait of his father. Life-size, in oils, done from a photograph 2 years before the murder. His father in a dark suit, one hand resting on the back of a chair, the pocket watch chain visible against the vest, the same watch that now sat in Alessandro's own inner pocket, 10 years older than the man in the painting himself would ever be. Alessandro stopped in front of it. He looked up into his father's painted eyes for a long moment. He felt the pocket watch press against his ribs like a small, patient heart that was not his. Papa, he said quietly. The house did not answer. It never did. They came back. His voice was almost calm. Almost. They came back through my own bed. In the days that followed, while Marco followed money across 3 states and Emma listened at half-open doors, something quieter began to happen in the house. Alessandro began to notice Sofia. He had known her for 2 years. She had come to the estate through a small parish agency his mother's old priest had recommended before he died. She was polite, punctual, and almost invisible. That was what he had wanted. That was what he had approved. That, in truth, was what he had never really looked at. He looked at her now. He looked at her because she had noticed him first. She noticed, without saying a word, that he had stopped finishing his dinner. She noticed that he was thinner along the jaw. She noticed that the study lamp was still burning at 2 a.m, 3 nights in a row. He did not tell her these things. She saw them, the way a mother sees a child's fever before the child mentions it. So each night, at 10:30, without being asked, a small tray began to appear on the low table beside his study door. A bowl of soup, bread, a cloth napkin folded over the edge, a pear or an apple, sliced, a small glass of water, nothing else. The first night, he assumed the cook had sent it and thought nothing of it. The second night, he opened the door and saw the tray and knew, from the neat folding of the napkin, that the cook had not touched it. The third night, he stepped out into the hallway just quickly enough to see the hem of a gray dress disappear around the corner toward the servant's stair. The fourth night, he waited by the door. At 10:29, he heard the soft, familiar footsteps. He opened the door before she could set the tray down. Sofia startled, then steadied. She was holding the tray with both hands. She wore the same plain gray dress she wore every evening, her long brown hair pinned back in a low knot, one small strand loose against her temple as always. She was 29 years old, and there was a tiredness around her eyes that had been there so long it had become a feature, not a mood. "Sir," she said, "I did not mean to disturb you. You are not disturbing me." She did not move. She held the tray between them like a small, polite wall. "Come in for a moment, Sofia." She hesitated. "Please." She stepped in. He closed the door behind her, but not all the way. He left it a finger's width open, so no one who passed could say later that it had been shut. He gestured to the small round table by the window. She set the tray down there. She did not sit. She stood beside it with her hands folded in front of her, waiting to be dismissed. "Sit for a minute," he said. "I am tired of eating alone." She looked at him then, really looked. For the first time, he saw her weigh the request. He saw her decide. She sat, on the edge of the chair, hands still folded. He took the other chair. He picked up the spoon. The soup was a simple minestrone, still warm, the vegetables cut small, and even the way his mother had cut them when he was a boy. He ate a spoonful. He ate another. It was the first food that had tasted like anything in 4 days. "Who taught you to make this?" he asked. "My mother, sir, and my grandmother before her, but she was Portuguese, so there is a little too much garlic for a proper Italian." He almost smiled. "There is exactly enough garlic." She lowered her eyes, not from shyness, but from something like habit. He ate slowly. He did not fill the silence. Neither did she. After a while, without looking at her, he said, "Emma told me once, weeks ago, that her father was a firefighter. Her hands did not move, but he saw her breath change." "Yes, sir. Would you tell me?" She was quiet for a long moment. He thought she might refuse. It would have been within her right. He would not have pushed. "His name was Daniel," she said finally. "Daniel Bennett. He was 31. There was a fire in a 3-decker off Broad Street. 4 winters ago. An old couple lived on the top floor. Their grandson was visiting, 6 years old. Emma was 2. She smiled a very small smile, the kind that hurts to make. He went in 3 times. He brought the grandmother out. He went back and he brought the grandfather out. He went back a 3rd time for the boy." She did not need to finish the sentence. "They gave him a stone at Swan Point Cemetery," she said. "The city named a small park after him in Elmwood. Emma does not remember his face. She only remembers the coat. He came home once in his gear when she was learning to walk. She remembers the coat." Alessandro set the spoon down. "Sophia, I am sorry. Thank you, sir. Do you speak of him with her?" "Every night, sir. I tell her one story about her father every night before she sleeps, even if it is a small one, even if it is only that he liked butter on his toast. She will not have his voice. She will have his stories." For a long moment neither of them spoke. Then he asked, softly, the question he had not meant to ask. "How did you keep standing?" She looked up at him at last. Her eyes were very clear. "I did not, sir. Not for a long time. For months, I could not stand. My mother came and stood for me. She cooked, she washed, she fed Emma. I sat by the window. Then one morning I got up and I made Emma's breakfast, because I understood that if I did not stand, no one would teach her how." She paused. "My husband used to say," she went on, "that being brave does not mean not being afraid. It means doing the next thing while you are afraid. He said it to the young ones at the firehouse. He said it to me the night before that fire. I did not understand it then. I understand it now." Alessandro did not answer at once. He was looking at her the way a man looks at a lamp he has walked past every night for 2 years, and only now, tonight, has bothered to notice was the reason he could see. He looked at her a moment longer than he needed to, long enough that she noticed, long enough that she looked back at him, without dropping her eyes. Neither of them heard the door. Neither of them heard the soft breath of it opening the rest of the way, or the faint sigh of silk against the frame, until Isabella was already standing in it. She wore a pale champagne robe. Her hair was still pinned up from the evening. In one hand, she held a small book she had come to return to the study shelves. In the other, a tumbler of amber liquor half drunk. Her eyes moved once, precisely, over the scene, the tray, the soup, the chair pulled out for the maid, still seated, her fiancé, leaning slightly forward across the small table, his gaze fixed on the maid's face. She smiled. The smile came a beat too late. For half a second, no longer, but exactly that long, the corners of her mouth did not remember what they were meant to do, and the smile froze on her face like a photograph a hand had not quite finished developing. Then it moved again, wide and warm. "Am I interrupting?" she said sweetly. "I only came to bring back a book." Alessandro rose smoothly, as if he had been about to rise anyway. "You are not interrupting," he said. Sophia was returning a tray. Sophia had already stood. She reached for the tray with steady hands, though her eyes did not lift. "Good night, sir. Ma'am." She dipped her head to each of them and slipped past Isabella at the door. Her step in the hallway was even. She did not hurry. Alessandro respected her for that more than he could say. Isabella watched her go. Then she turned her smile back on Alessandro, wider now, the way one turns up a lamp. "You must be careful with her, my love," she said, walking to the shelf and sliding the little book into its place. "Servants who are treated too kindly begin to imagine things. It is not fair to them. Thank you, Isabella. I will remember that." She crossed to him, brushed a soft kiss against his cheek. She smelled of jasmine and, faintly, of the amber liquor in her tumbler. "Come to bed soon," she said. "You look tired." "I will." She left. Her heels went down the hall. He stood alone in the study for a long moment. Then he closed the door fully. He walked to the desk, opened the lower drawer, and took out the small black receiver with its single earpiece. He turned it on. He did not put the earpiece in yet. He waited. Upstairs, he knew, Isabella would sit at her vanity. She would take down her hair one long pin at a time. She would remove her rings, and, at some hour of the night, when the house had settled fully around her, she would reach for her phone. She did. It was 1:17 in the morning when the little indicator on the receiver blinked awake. Alessandro slipped the earpiece in. Her voice came through, low, close to the mirror. He was with her tonight. The man's voice answered on the other end. Calm, patient, unhurried. The same voice from the last time. The voice he had not then been able to name. The voice he could name now. With the maid? In the study, at 10:30, with the door not quite closed, she brought him soup. He was looking at her, Vittorio. Really looking. I do not like it. Vittorio's voice softened. Cara, he is a dying man. Dying men look at everything one last time. Do not make small things into large ones. He is not dying fast enough. There was a small pause. You are impatient. I am careful. I have been careful for 2 years. I have kissed his mouth and I have laughed at his stories and I have let his hand rest on my knee at dinners while I thought of yours. And every day I sit at his father's table with his mother's picture on the wall. And every day I have to smile at that painting. Do not tell me I am impatient. Cara mia, how much longer, Vittorio? 6 weeks. No more. You will marry him inside 4. The lawyers have prepared the prenuptial. Once you sign, you inherit as spouse. Once he dies of his weak heart, you inherit as widow. Once you are widow, you invite me to Providence to advise a grieving woman on the management of her late husband's holdings. Within a year, in a merger dressed as a favor, Providence becomes ours without a single Romano soldier fired, without a single headline, without a single boy in a coffin. And if the poison does not hold, it will hold. Enzo Ferrante will sign what a good doctor signs when a good doctor is paid enough. The state will close the file. The men who love Alessandro will grieve. The men who tolerate him will kneel. You will wear black beautifully. You always do. 2 years, Vittorio. 2 years of him. 2 years for 30 years of us, Cara. You knew the price. Her voice softened. It became a private voice, a voice she had never used with Alessandro. It hurt to hear. Come to Providence next week. Just one night. I need to see your face. Impossible. Not until the funeral. Then Boston. Halfway. Cara, please. A long, gentle silence. After the wedding, he said. I will come the night after the wedding, on the pretext of blessing my dear old friend's new bride. 1 hour in a room where no one can see. That is my promise. I will hold you to it. You will. There was a small movement of silk. She had shifted on the stool. Then, almost as an afterthought, as if she were remembering to close a window on her way to bed, Isabella said, Vittorio, yes, Cara, there is a small thing, a very small thing. Tell me, there is a child in the house, Emma, 6 years old. She is the maid's daughter. She came into the kitchen the night I dressed the butter. She saw me. The line went absolutely quiet. Then, very quietly, Vittorio said, You did not tell me this. I handled it. I gave her money. I told her a story. I told her Mama would lose her job. She is a child. She stayed quiet. You are sure. She has not said a word. She keeps her eyes down. She brings my slippers. She is 6 years old. Vittorio. She is not going to open her mouth to a man who owns her mother's paycheck. Another silence. Longer this time. Alessandro could hear, faintly, the wet sound of a man drawing on a cigar. And the little girl? Vittorio said finally. His voice had not changed pitch. That was the terrifying part. The one who works with her mother? Emma, yes. There was a beat. If she becomes a problem, Vittorio said, in the same even, patient tone he had used to talk about wedding lawyers, we take care of her too. Cleanly. Isabella did not answer at once. Then, softly, cleanly. Do not let it come to that, Cara. It is untidy work. And it stays with a man. It will not come to that. Good night, my love. Good night. The line went dead. The bedroom above went silent. A drawer slid. A light clicked off. Alessandro did not move. He sat in the dark study with the earpiece still in his ear, listening to the empty hush of a room where a woman had just, in a single flat sentence, agreed to the killing of a 6-year-old child if the 6-year-old child became inconvenient. He took the earpiece out very slowly. He set it down on the desk. His hand was steady. He noted, with a strange, distant part of his mind, how steady it was. Then he stood. He walked, without haste, to the tall painting on the far wall. He stood in front of his father in the low green light of the desk lamp. He drew the silver pocket watch out of his pocket. He opened it. He looked, for a moment, at the small photograph inside his mother in a white dress, his father in a dark suit, on the church steps, 39 years ago, before either of them had known any of this was coming. He closed the watch. He held it against his chest. "No," he said, so quietly the room barely held the word. "Not the child. Not in this house." The play grew sharper in the days after that call, because now Alessandro was performing for 2 audiences at once, the woman upstairs, and the child he had sworn to keep alive. He moved slower. He ate less. He allowed himself, at dinner, to pause in the middle of a sentence, blink once as if the room had briefly tilted, and press the flat of his hand to his sternum with a soft, apologetic smile. He allowed Enzo Ferrante to visit the house twice that week in his gray overcoat, carrying a leather bag, staying 40 minutes, and leaving with a grave nod that Isabella could see from the top of the stairs. Enzo, who had signed nothing for a lie in 40 years, was more than willing to lie for a truth. "I told her, when she asked me in the hallway," Enzo said quietly, sitting across from Alessandro in the study after the second visit, "that your rhythm has grown irregular, that I have prescribed rest, that I am worried." "Thank you, old friend." "Alessandro." Enzo leaned forward. "How long do you need me to keep telling her this?" 2 more weeks, perhaps 3. "You have 3. Enzo left. Isabella watched all of it. She listened at doors. She read the labels on the little brown pill bottles in Alessandro's bathroom that he had, with Enzo's help, arranged for her to find. She noted the way he now took the stairs, one hand on the banister, one small pause at the landing. She reported dutifully to her mirror at night. Her voice, when she spoke to Vittorio, was warm and pleased. And yet, something was wrong. She did not know what. She could not name it. But a woman who has spent 2 years watching a man had learned the shape of him, and this shape did not quite fit, because at the same time that Alessandro was climbing the stairs like a tired old bull, he was also signing 3 shipping contracts a day. At the same time that he was pressing his hand to his chest at dinner, he was taking meetings in the study until 2 in the morning. At the same time that he was leaving half his plate uneaten, he was, she noticed, thinner along the jaw but no thinner along the shoulder. His grip, when he took her hand at breakfast, was not softer than it had been 3 weeks ago. It was, if anything, more deliberate. A man whose heart was being quietly murdered from the inside did not, in her experience, close a $2 million deal on a Wednesday afternoon, and then telephone a state senator about a charity ball on a Wednesday night. She began to watch him differently, not with concern, with study. He felt it. He gave her more theater. He sighed a little longer. He asked her to pour his coffee for him because his hand was tired, and he watched her pour it with the small, patient smile of a woman who had already imagined pouring it into an urn. "You are doing too much, my love," she murmured, sliding the cup toward him. "Am I? Cancel the meeting tonight. I cannot. Alessandro, it is only signatures. I will be home by 10. I promise." He came home at midnight. That night, at nearly 2 in the morning, in her dressing room, she made a call she had not made before at that hour. Alessandro was already awake, downstairs, the earpiece in. "Amore," Isabella said in a low voice. "Cara, it is late. I know. I would not call at this hour if it were nothing. Speak." She spoke fast, not in the voice she used with her lover, in a tighter, harder voice underneath it, the voice Alessandro had never been shown, the voice she had used, no doubt, in whatever room she had first been trained in. "Something is off, Vittorio." "Off how?" Enzo says his heart is weakening. He looks the part, he walks the part. But he is not weaker. He is signing 3 contracts a day. He was in a meeting downstairs until midnight tonight. He is thinner but not slower. I have watched him, Vittorio. I know his body. He should be weaker by now. How much has he taken? Every morning. The full dose. I have been careful. He eats it every morning. He does not skip. He has not been sick to his stomach even once. You are certain? I have watched the plate. I have watched the mouth. I have watched him drink water after. He is eating it. A long silence on the line. Then, very softly, in a tone so low it seemed to come from underneath the floor. "Cara, tell me the truth. Have you eaten from that butter?" The question caught her. He heard her breath catch. Alessandro heard it too, in his earpiece, and his own breath went still. "No, of course not. Do you think I am a fool? I think you are careful. I think you have kept it out of your mouth. But has anyone else? Any guest? Any cook? No. I have been the one to serve him from that dish every morning. Only him. He takes it. No one else. Then either the man has the constitution of a bull, or someone in your house is switching the butter." Silence. Alessandro, in the study, closed his eyes for a single second. Cara, Vittorio said. He was thinking aloud now. He was speaking slowly, working it out. Who has been in the kitchen? At odd hours. Since the day you dressed the butter. No one, Vittorio. No one who matters. The cook, of course. Sofia, before dawn. The child. Once. She stopped. The line was very quiet. Alessandro's hand tightened on the arm of the chair. The child, Vittorio said. She has kept quiet. Vittorio. She has kept perfectly quiet. Her eyes have been on the floor for 2 weeks. She has taken the money. I have seen her flinch when I mention her mother, cara mia. She is 6 years old. She was 6 years old, Vittorio said, softly. The last time you dressed that butter. She may be older now. Isabella did not answer. How well, Vittorio said. Do you know his relationship with the maid? She brings him soup, Isabella said. And then, unwillingly, he looks at her. Ah, the single sound, that soft ah, chilled Alessandro more than anything else the man had said in 10 years. Vittorio spoke slowly now, the way a general speaks when moving pieces on a table. Cara, listen to me. We do not have time for 1 more month of careful. We do not have time for a wedding with lawyers. We do not have time for a quiet funeral in the spring. If he is not weakening, then either the poison is not reaching him, or he knows. If he knows, then he is playing you. If he is playing you, then he is not alone. And if he is not alone, then the maid, or the child, or the man Marco, or all 3 of them, are already inside the plan. Vittorio, change of plan, Cara. Her voice, when it came back, was thinner. Yes, tomorrow night. Tomorrow, before he comes home from wherever he is meeting his lawyers or his priests, or his ghosts. You will make sure you are not in the house. You will find yourself a reason, a fitting, a church visit, a tea. You will be seen in 3 separate places. Yes, my men will come to the estate. 2 cars, quiet, in and out. Yes, they will not touch anyone else. They will not fire a shot inside those walls. They will take 2 people, alive, unharmed if possible. Which 2? She already knew. Bring me the maid, Vittorio said. And the child? Tonight, if you can arrange it. Tomorrow at the latest. Do you understand me, Cara? Isabella closed her eyes. Alessandro could hear it in the small change of her breath. Yes, Vittorio. Do not fail me on this. I will not. Good girl. The line went dead. Upstairs, silk brushed silk, a drawer closed, a light clicked off. Downstairs, in the dark study, Alessandro took the earpiece out with fingers that had gone very cold, and he sat looking at nothing, and he understood that tomorrow night the war he had spent 10 years avoiding was going to come, one way or another, through the back door of his own kitchen, for a woman who brought him soup, and for a small girl who carried a whistle inside a cloth doll. By 6 the next morning, Alessandro was in the study with Marco. He did not tell Marco everything. He did not tell him that a 6-year-old girl had been put on a killing list at 2 in the morning. He told him what a soldier needed to know to keep her alive. They are coming for Sofia and Emma, he said. Today. Tonight at the latest. Vittorio has changed the plan. He has lost patience with the poison. Marco's jaw set. How many? He said 2 cars. He will send 3. He always sends 1 more than he says. Yes, boss. Sofia does not know. Emma does not know. They cannot know. If they act strangely, Isabella will read them in an hour. We must let this house look exactly as it looked yesterday. Sofia hangs the wash at 3. Emma plays in the back garden with the doll at 4. Cook goes to the market at 4:30. All of it happens on schedule. Marco understood without being told. You are letting them come. I am letting them come. I am letting them take Sofia and Emma. Because if I stop it here, at the gate, Vittorio simply pulls back to New Haven and rebuilds. I will not know where. I will not know when. And the next time he moves, I may not see it. This time I know where they are going. You are certain. I am certain. He wants me to come running. Alessandro spread a folded map across the desk. It was a hand-drawn plan of a large waterfront lot in Warwick, 20 minutes south of the estate, a shuttered warehouse on Post Road. Old Romano property that had been leased and released and finally abandoned 6 years ago after a fire. The paper on record said Bay Harbor Consulting held the lease now. Marco's eyes narrowed. Bay Harbor, Bay Harbor. He has been renting my own building from me through a shell for 8 months, Marco. He has been walking through my rooms in the dark, preparing them. For what? For a family to die in. Marco pressed his hand flat on the map. They will not take Sofia and Emma to New Haven, Alessandro said. That is the entire point. Vittorio does not want them. He wants me. He wants the whole Romano family to come charging into a warehouse he has spent 6 months turning into a coffin. He has wired the beams with plastic. He has sniper nests on the 2 waterside roofs. He has 1 road in and 1 road out, and he has trucks placed on both. He will keep the mother and the child in a back room where he can be certain we will look. He will let me hear them scream through a door if he has to. He wants every soldier I own to be inside that building at the same moment, so that when the beams go, Providence goes with them. No headline, no survivors, and the peace between the families falls to whoever is left standing in New Haven, which will be him. Marco's face had gone gray. Boss, if we send everyone, we do not send everyone. We send no one to Warwick. Or, rather, we send only me. Boss, listen. Alessandro's voice was very quiet, very level. Vittorio's plan requires 2 things to happen at once. Sophia and Emma must be at the warehouse when I arrive, and every soldier I have must arrive behind me. If either of those 2 things does not happen, his trap does not close, so we take one of them away, and we take the one he does not expect. Which? Emma and Sophia. He will believe they are at Warwick, but they will not be, because I will not let them be, because we will not follow the car that leaves this house today with them in it. Do you understand? Marco stared at him. Then, slowly, he understood. Boss, you are going to let them be taken, and then you are going to take them back before they ever see the warehouse. No. Alessandro shook his head. Once. I am going to let them be taken, and I am going to let Vittorio believe he has them at the warehouse. He will believe it because Isabella will tell him so. From the fitting she is at right now, on his instructions. He will believe it because I will go to Warwick alone, on foot, at the hour he sets, wearing my father's coat, and I will walk into his building with my hands empty and my mouth calm, exactly as a father walks in for a daughter. That is the story he wants. I will give him that story. Meanwhile, at the same hour, 90 miles away, at his real house in New Haven, his true safe house, the one he thinks no one has found you, and every soldier we have will be tearing his door off the hinges. Because that is where he is actually going to keep Sophia and Emma tonight. Not in the trap, in the vault, under his own feet, because he does not, truly, trust anyone else with them. Marco was silent. How do we know that address, boss? Because I have known that address for 11 months. Because the woman who once cleaned his kitchen was my mother's godchild, and she came to me a year ago, and she told me. Because I have kept that piece of paper in a drawer for 11 months, waiting for a reason to use it. Now I have my reason. Marco let out a long, slow breath. Warwick is the show. New Haven is the truth. Warwick is the show. New Haven is the truth. And you, boss, I will hold him there. I will keep him talking. I will keep his eyes on me until you get them out. Then I will come home. Marco did not ask the question underneath that. He knew better. Boss, he said quietly. Who leads the assault on New Haven? You do. Who stays with you at Warwick? No one. Boss, no one, Marco. That is an order. Every gun I own goes with you to New Haven. Every one. If I bring a single soldier to Warwick, Vittorio will smell the trick, and he will kill Sophia and Emma before you arrive. I am the bait. You are the knife. Do not fail me. Marco looked at him for a long moment. Then, quietly, I will not fail you, boss. Go. Prepare the men. Split them into 3 teams. I want everyone in position outside New Haven by sundown. Radio's cold until I give the word. No calls. No phones near the house. Yes, boss. Marco left. Alessandro sat alone for another moment. He drew out the pocket watch. He opened it. He touched the small photograph inside with the tip of his thumb, once, and closed it. Then he stood up, put on his overcoat, and left the house for a scheduled meeting in the city, exactly as he did every Tuesday, so that any pair of eyes watching from a car across the street would see nothing out of the ordinary. At 3:15 that afternoon, in the pale October sun, Sophia Bennett carried a wicker basket into the side garden of the Romano estate and began to pin white sheets to the long clothesline strung between 2 young maples. She hummed as she worked, a hymn her grandmother had taught her. At 3:50, in the back garden, Emma sat down cross-legged on a patch of dry lawn between 2 rose bushes. She spread out a small blue cloth she had taken from the kitchen drawer. On it, she set 3 pine cones and a smooth stone she had been keeping in her apron pocket. She sat Rosie in the middle of the cloth and began, in a soft, patient voice, to explain to Rosie about how the leaves change color because the tree is going to sleep. At 3:58, 3 black SUVs turned off Atwell's Avenue, glided up the slow rise past the old church, and slowed to a stop just past the tall iron gate of the Romano estate. The first 2 SUVs stopped at the gate. The third rolled slowly past it and parked further up the curb, engine still running, blocking any car that might try to pass. The doors of the first 2 opened almost at once, and 6 men stepped out onto the sidewalk in dark coats and darker gloves. They did not speak. They did not run. They walked. 2 of them went straight to the side path that ran along the tall boxwood hedge, the path Sophia used to reach the clothesline. 2 went to the back of the property, where the low wrought iron fence separated the rear garden from the alley. The last 2 stayed at the front, one at the gate, one at the corner, both watching the empty street. Sophia was pinning the last sheet when she heard the gravel on the side path. She turned, still smiling faintly at whatever line of the hymn she had been humming, expecting the postman, expecting the gardener, expecting anyone but what she saw. 2 large men in charcoal coats, walking calmly toward her between the hedges, one of them already lifting a gloved hand for her mouth. She did not scream first. She acted first. "Emma," she shouted, so loud the wet sheets shook on the line. "Emma, run, run to the kitchen, run." Then the gloved hand was on her mouth, and the second man's arm was around her waist, and her feet came off the ground. In the back garden, on the small blue cloth between the rose bushes, Emma looked up. The world, which had been very small and very quiet a moment before, split open. Her mother's voice. Her mother's voice, not the way her mother's voice sounded, but the way it had sounded once, 4 winters ago, when a man in a firefighter's coat had not come home. Emma stood up. Rosie tumbled from her lap onto the grass. She did not see it fall. She started to run. She ran toward the kitchen door, small legs pumping, the way her mother had told her to, and she almost made it. She was 5 paces from the low step when something in her, some small piece of a child who had been listening at doors for 2 weeks, who knew that a whistle in a doll's back was meant for exactly this, turned her around. She had left Rosie. Rosie had the whistle. Rosie was how Alessandro found her. She turned. She ran back. She was almost to the roses when a large gloved hand closed around her upper arm and lifted her clean off the ground. She did not scream. She twisted like a small animal, both hands reaching down for the doll, fingers scraping the grass, and her small nails caught the corner of Rosie's dress. She pulled. Rosie came halfway up in her hand. Then a second man took her from the first, more roughly, one arm around her middle, one hand across her mouth. He carried her at a fast walk back around the side of the house toward the front curb. The first man followed with Sophia, who was silent now, kicking once, blood already at the corner of her mouth from the glove. At the curb, the middle SUV had its back door open. The man carrying Emma bent to shove her in. She still had Rosie. She had held on to the doll with both small fists all the way from the roses to the street. She had not let go once. Now, as her body twisted in the man's arms toward the open door of the truck, she remembered what the doll was for. She fumbled behind Rosie's small back for the loosened seam. She found it. She pushed her thumb inside. The whistle was there, hard and cool and silver, exactly where he had put it 3 weeks ago. She got her thumb and finger around it. She began to draw it out. The man saw the flash of silver against the cloth. "Hey." He grabbed her wrist with the hand that had been over her mouth, hard enough that she made a small hurt sound. He forced her fingers open. The whistle fell into his palm. He held it up. It caught the pale afternoon light. He looked at it. "Cute," he said flatly. "Cute little toy." He closed his fist around it, dropped it into his coat pocket, and shoved Emma the rest of the way into the SUV. She landed hard on the seat. Rosie, still gripped in her other hand, fell from her fingers as her palms hit the leather. The doll bounced once on the running board. It bounced a second time on the concrete of the curb. It came to rest on the grass just inside the gate. Face up, one arm flung out, the small, stitched mouth still smiling at nothing. Sophia was pushed in beside Emma. The door slammed. The 3 SUVs pulled away from the curb in a slow, unhurried line, as if they had come only to drop off flowers. Inside the middle car, Emma pressed her face against her mother's side. Sophia wrapped both arms around her and did not let go. Neither of them made a sound. The man in the front passenger seat did not turn around. Neither did the driver. There was no need. Everyone in that car understood their part. In her lap, Sophia's hand stroked the back of Emma's head over and over. "Shh, baby," she whispered. "Shh. Mama's here. Mama's here." Emma did not cry. She only thought, over and over, of Rosie on the grass by the gate. He had said Rosie would tell him where she was, but he had taken the whistle. She did not know, and could not have known, at 6 years old, that on the night Alessandro had loosened Rosie's back to hide the whistle, He had also slid into the deeper stuffing of the doll, a second small thing, flatter than a coin, no bigger than a fingernail, sewn back inside a pocket of cotton where a child's fingers, even a child looking for a whistle, would never think to look. A locator chip. He had not told her. He had not told Sophia. He had not even told Marco. He had told no one, because a secret told to no one is a secret no one can take. Rosie lay on the grass by the open gate, face up, tiny cloth heart pumping out a signal every 4 seconds. At the same moment, 10 miles away, in the back of a black service van parked on a side street in Federal Hill, Marco Bianchi sat with a laptop open on his knees. A team of 6 men in dark tactical vests waited around him, silent. Marco had been watching a blank map for 2 hours, the way a man watches a phone that has not yet rung. At 4:01, a single small blue dot flickered awake on his screen. It appeared in the back garden of the Romano estate. It sat still for exactly 7 seconds. Then it began to move. Marco leaned forward very slowly. He watched the dot slide down the property line. He watched it cross the sidewalk. He watched it pass through the front gate. He watched it come to rest at the curb for 4 seconds, and then he watched it stay exactly there, unmoving, as 3 separate blue dots he had also been quietly tracking, the 3 SUVs he had personally tagged the night before while they were still parked at a garage in East Providence, began to slide away from that same curb. The doll had been left behind. The chip inside the doll had been left with it. But Marco was not looking at the doll's dot anymore. He was looking at the 3 moving dots. They were heading south, not east toward New Haven, as he and Alessandro had planned for, not west toward Warwick, as the trap called for. South, along the shoreline, toward Point Judith, toward the water. Marco stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he reached, very calmly, for the radio at his belt. "Boss," he said, "they have them, and they are not going where you said." Alessandro was standing on Federal Street, half a block from his lawyer's office, when the radio in his coat pocket vibrated once against his ribs. He excused himself with the small, polite lie a rich man is always allowed. He stepped into the shadow of a doorway. He put the earpiece in. "Speak, boss," Marco said. "They have them, and they are not going where you said. Signal is moving south. Past Cranston, they are heading toward the shore." Alessandro's face did not change. In his chest, something rearranged itself the way a hand rearranges chess pieces in the second, before an opponent notices the board has changed. South. South. Not west to Warwick. Not east to New Haven. Point Judith. That is my best guess. Point Judith. The old fishing harbor at the tip of the state. A private marina Vittorio had bought through a shell 3 years ago, ostensibly for a tuna boat. A dock. A boat. Deep water. A 90-minute ride to Long Island Sound in one direction, or open Atlantic in the other, and no state line on the way. Vittorio had not needed a warehouse. Vittorio had needed a boat. He is not planning to bring them to Warwick, Alessandro said quietly. He is planning to move them onto the water. The warehouse is only where he wants me. That is his coffin, still, not theirs. So the trick works. The trick works. But we adjust. Where are you? Federal Hill Garage. 6 men. Ready. Get on the road. Follow the signal. Keep 2 miles back. Do not close until I give the word. If they reach a dock, if they try to load Sophia and Emma onto anything with a hull, you move without me. That is an order. Yes, boss. How many chase teams can you split into on the road? 3. 2 men each. Do it. Leapfrog them. Different exits. Different cars if you can borrow them from Rocco on the way. I do not want them to look in their mirror and see the same headlights twice. Yes, boss. Marco, if they stop before the water, if they stop anywhere, a rest area, a house, a back road, you do not move until I say. He may be testing us. Understood. Alessandro cut the line. He walked, at exactly the speed he had been walking before the radio buzzed, back to his own car parked on the corner. He nodded to his driver, who did not know anything yet, and gave a single instruction. Home, not fast. They arrived at the estate at 5:05. The front gate was closed and locked. The gardener was raking on schedule. The postman had come and gone. From the street, the property looked exactly as it always looked at that hour on a Tuesday in October. Alessandro paid the driver and told him to take the rest of the afternoon off. The driver, who had also served his father, understood something without being told, and left without a word. Alessandro pushed the small pedestrian gate open himself. He walked up the path. He walked the way a man walks when he already knows what he will find, and is only walking because the walk is part of the ritual. part of the promise he is about to make. He stopped at the bottom of the front steps. Rosie lay on the third step from the top, face up, one arm flung out, the stitched mouth still smiling at nothing. The blue cloth of the little dress was creased where a small hand had held it for 4 minutes and then let go all at once. He stood there for a long time. Then he climbed the 3 steps. He knelt. He picked her up. She was warm. That was the thing that almost broke him. She had been out on the grass for over an hour, in the cool October air, and yet the doll was warm because a child had held her against her body until the last second, and the warmth of that body had gone all the way into the cloth and stayed there. He held Rosie against his chest. He did not close his eyes. He did not curse. He did not, in that moment, allow himself grief. Grief was a tax he could not afford to pay yet. He simply stood on the top step, with the doll pressed to the front of his coat, and let one long, slow breath leave him. His phone rang inside his coat. He knew the sound of that ring. He had assigned it, 2 weeks ago, to a number that had never called him. He had assigned it because he had known, eventually, it would. He put Rosie carefully into the crook of his left arm. He took the phone out with his right hand. He answered on the 3rd ring. Yes, Alessandro. The voice was calm, warm, almost, the rasp of northern Italy under the cigar. You should not have opened your own gate. A man of your station has staff for such things. Vittorio. A small, pleased breath. So we are past pretending. We are past pretending. Good, good. That was becoming tiresome for both of us. Alessandro looked out over the top of the roses at the empty street, at the pale October light on the neighbor's roof. Where are they? Somewhere safe, somewhere warm. The mother has a small cut on her lip. She fought at the wash line. The child has not made a sound. She is a serious little thing. If a mark comes on the child, Vittorio, she is not marked. I gave the order. I keep my orders. A pause. For now. Alessandro said nothing. I want to see you, Alessandro. It has been too long. 10 years. We have things to say to each other. Things that should not be said over a telephone. Speak. There is a warehouse. On Post Road in Warwick. You know it well. You should. You have owned it for 20 years, though these last months you have been renting it back to me without knowing. A soft laugh. The rent is very reasonable. Alessandro did not laugh. Come there, Vittorio said. Tonight. 9 o'clock. Alone. On foot. Through the north door. No car in the lot. No man in your shadow. No wire in your coat. Bring nothing but yourself. If I see one soldier in the street outside, if I see one car circling, the mother and the child will be on a boat before you finish your first sentence, and you will never see either of them again in this life. Alessandro let a slow beat pass. He let his voice come out the way Vittorio needed it to come out. Tired. A little broken. The voice of a man whose knees were already bending. 9 o'clock, he said. Alone. Warwick. I understand. Do you? I understand. Good. Good, my boy. There was warmth in that word, my boy, that made Alessandro's hand tighten on the phone. It did not have to be this way, you know. It never had to be this way. If you had only 9 o'clock, Alessandro said again. Vittorio was silent for a moment. Then, softer. 9 o'clock. Do not be late. The line clicked dead. Alessandro lowered the phone. He stood a moment longer on the top step of the house he had grown up in, holding a doll to his chest with one arm, holding a phone in the other. And he understood 2 things very clearly. He understood that Vittorio did not know Marco was already following his cars south, and he understood that Vittorio did not know Emma had ever been given a whistle at all, which meant Vittorio did not yet know she had been given anything else. He turned and went into the house. 15 minutes later, the study door closed behind 8 men. Marco was already on the radio from the road, Liv, feeding coordinates into the receiver on the desk. Rocco stood at the map. 2 lieutenants, both his father's men, stood at the window. Enzo Ferrante, who was not a soldier but had been asked to come anyway, sat quietly by the fireplace with his black bag between his ankles. Alessandro laid Rosie down on the corner of the desk, face up, exactly as he had found her. Vittorio wants a trap, he said quietly. He looked around the room at the men his father had trusted, and at the men who had chosen to trust him. We give him a bigger one. The map on the desk was old. It had been drawn 30 years earlier for a shipping route Alessandro's father had never lived to run. Alessandro laid 3 new pieces of paper across it. A satellite photograph of the Warwick warehouse, a satellite photograph of a small stone house on a hill in North Haven, Connecticut, and a marine chart of the coastline between Point Judith and the mouth of Narragansett Bay. He tapped each in turn. 3 teams, he said. 3 moves. All of them at 9 o'clock. Nothing before, nothing after. Every second matters. The men in the room did not speak. They listened. Team 1, the warehouse in Warwick, Post Road. He tapped the first photograph. Vittorio has wired the beams. He has snipers on the 2 waterside roofs. He has trucks on both approaches. He will kill everything that comes in through the front door. So nothing comes in through the front door except me. I walk in through the north entrance at 9 o'clock exactly. On foot, alone, unarmed, as he has demanded. He looked up. Rocco. Rocco straightened. You will lead Team 1 in a quiet ring outside the warehouse, half a mile out. 4 2-man units on the roads he has trucked. You do not engage. You do not fire. You do not move on the building. Your job is to make sure that when he tries to leave, because he will try to leave, once he understands what has happened tonight, he cannot. You close the roads behind him. That is all. Do you understand? Yes, boss. If any Moretti sniper comes off a roof, you take him quietly. If any Moretti truck rolls, you disable the engine block, not the driver. I want prisoners. I do not want a Providence morning paper full of dead men on a public road. Am I clear? You are clear, boss. Team 2. Marco. Marco's voice came through the radio speaker on the desk, flat and calm. Boss, you have followed the SUVs south. Where are you now? Just past South Kingstown. They are slowing. They will turn off for Point Judith inside 12 minutes. There is a small private marina at the tip of the point, owned by a shell of a shell, and I would bet the boat sitting on that dock right now. Then you will not let them reach that dock? No, boss, but you will also not stop them until I am inside the warehouse. Vittorio will be listening for their arrival at Point Judith. He will have someone at the marina waiting to send a single confirmation, probably a text, probably a word, probably the word yes the moment the mother and the child are on the boat. He is waiting for that word before he walks into the room I am standing in, because he wants to be certain that even if I somehow surprise him, he still has hostages on the water. Understood. So you let the SUVs turn off the highway. You let them pass the last public gas station. You let them come within a quarter mile of the marina gate. And there on that quiet stretch, before the water, before the man with the phone can send the word, you take them. Fast, clean, no shots into the vehicle with the mother and child inside. Blow the tires of the lead and rear cars. Pin the middle. Yes, boss. How many men can you have at the marina by 9? 12. 15, if I pull Enzo's nephew off his shift in Warwick. Take 15. Take 20 if you have to. Team 2 is the team that matters tonight, Marco. Everything else on this map is a distraction. I am hanging in the sky, so you can do your work in the dark. He paused. He looked at the radio. Marco, whatever happens to me tonight, whatever happens in that warehouse, whatever you hear in your earpiece, whatever you think you hear, you do not turn Team 2 around. You do not send a man north. You do not come for me. You save the mother. You save the child. That is your only order. That is an order older than tonight. Tell me you understand. There was a small silence on the line. Then, in a voice that was not quite as flat as before, Marco said, Boss, I understand. Save the mother. Save the child. Do not come for you. Good. Alessandro turned to the third piece of paper, the stone house on the hill in North Haven. Team 3, this is where Vittorio is right now. This is his true safe house. Not the villa the state knows about. Not the townhouse in New Haven. This one. On a private road above a vineyard. 2 men at the gate. 4 men inside on rotation. A basement with a steel door. He does his private business from that basement. He calls his lovers from that basement. He will be sitting in that basement at 9 o'clock tonight with a telephone and a cigar, waiting for the word from Point Judith and the sound of my step in Warwick, believing himself invisible. You will be visible to me, old man, he added, softly, to the photograph. He looked around the room. Gino. A gray-haired lieutenant nodded. You lead Team 3, 8 men, 2 vehicles. You are already in position, 20 miles out. You left Providence at noon on a fishing trip you invented last week for exactly this. At 9:05, when Vittorio's guards are staring at their phones, waiting for 2 updates and getting neither, you close on the house. Take the gate. Take the ground floor. Do not go into the basement. I repeat, do not touch the basement door. Whatever is in that basement is mine. Yes, boss. Take him alive if he comes up. Wound him if you must. But he does not die in that basement. He does not die tonight before I have looked in his face. Yes, boss. Alessandro straightened. To be clear, 3 moves, 9 o'clock. In Warwick, I walk into his coffin alone. In Point Judith, Marco takes the mother and the child before they touch water. In North Haven, Gino takes the house before Vittorio can lift a phone to save any of it. 3 arms of the same hand, closing on the same throat, at the same second. He is not going to feel the first 2 until it is too late for the third. He drew a breath. After 9 o'clock, if any of you are still standing, and any of you have a phone that works, and any of you hear me say the word Rosie, into a radio, that word only, no other, you come. All of you. To Warwick. To me. Fast. If you do not hear that word, you do not come for me. You bring the mother and the child home. You bring Vittorio to me later. You do not throw good soldiers away on a warehouse full of plastic. He looked at Rosie, still lying on the corner of the desk, face up. Now go. Every one of you. Radios cold from 8:45 to 9:05. No phones anywhere near any of the 3 sites. If anyone drops out of contact for those 20 minutes, do not panic. That is the plan. When Vittorio's ear listens for our chatter tonight, he will hear nothing, and it will make him feel like the smartest man in New England for exactly 6 minutes. Rocco allowed himself the first small smile of the evening. Then it was gone. The men left the room in single file. Marco's voice cut out on the radio as he moved to make his own calls. Enzo Ferrante was the last to rise. He stopped by Alessandro's chair. Alessandro. Enzo. You are going in there without a gun. Yes. For a woman and a child who do not belong to you by blood. Alessandro looked at him. They belong to me tonight, Enzo. That is enough. Enzo laid his hand for a moment on Alessandro's shoulder. He did not speak. He picked up his bag. He left. The study was empty. Alessandro stood alone at the desk. He picked Rosie up gently, carried her to the tall bookshelf, and set her upright on the shelf beside the framed photograph of his mother, where she would be safe while the world went to fire. He came back to the desk. He drew the silver pocket watch out of his coat and laid it flat in his palm. He opened it. Inside, under the small glass, was the photograph he had known by heart since he was 12 years old. His father in a dark suit, one hand tucked into his vest, standing on the church steps beside a young woman in a white lace dress and a laughing mouth. His mother, 23 years old, in the sunlight of 1987, at the start of a life she had believed would be long. He looked at them for a long moment. He touched the edge of the photograph, once, with the tip of his thumb. "Pray for me, Mama," he said softly. Then, softer, "Watch the child for me, Papa." He closed the watch. He tucked it into the inside pocket of his overcoat, over his heart, where his father had always carried it. He walked out of the study, down the marble hall, past the empty dining room where a small girl had once whispered 5 words that had saved his life, and out through the front door into the cold blue evening of an October night in Providence. His car was waiting in the drive. He got in. He did not look back at the house. At 8:59, 3 things happened in 3 different places at almost the same second. In Warwick, on a stretch of road behind the old Post Road warehouse, Alessandro Romano got out of a black sedan and closed the door softly behind him. He wore his father's overcoat. He carried nothing in his hands. He carried, in the inside pocket, a silver pocket watch and a small black earpiece hidden in the collar of his coat. He walked, alone, along the crumbling asphalt toward the north entrance of the warehouse, where a single bulb burned above a rusted metal door. At the same second, on a quiet stretch of Ocean Road 200 yards from the private gate of a small marina at Point Judith, 3 black SUVs came around a long curve into the beams of 2 work trucks that Marco Bianchi had parked crossways on the road 40 minutes earlier. The lead SUV braked hard. Its front left tire blew out with a low pop as the round from a rifle in the dunes went through the rubber and into the wheel well. The rear SUV was already trapped by a service van that had slid across the road behind it. The middle SUV, the one carrying Sophia and Emma, sat pinned between the two. At the same second, 90 miles away, on a private road above a vineyard in North Haven, Connecticut, 8 men in dark coats moved through a low stone wall and across a lawn under a moon that had chosen tonight not to be full. Gino himself took the front gate with a short, brutal grip and a wire garrote. 2 men went down at the door before they could reach their radios. Somewhere in the house, a cigar went out in an ashtray, and Vittorio Moretti's private line rang and rang and rang, and no one answered it because no one at Point Judith was in a position to lift a phone. Alessandro pushed open the north door of the warehouse. Inside, it was cavernous, cold, lit by tall halogen lamps set on tripods. Rows and rows of stacked shipping containers made narrow canyons through the concrete floor. Somewhere very high, in the rafters, a small bird fluttered once, and was still. Alessandro stepped in with his hands open at his sides. "Vittorio," he called. His voice went up into the metal roof and came back thinner. "I am here, alone, as you asked." For a long moment, nothing answered. Then, from somewhere between the containers, a voice, warm, amused, very close. "My boy." Vittorio Moretti stepped out from behind a rust-red container 10 yards ahead. He wore a black overcoat and no gloves. His iron-gray hair was combed back exactly as it had been in the photograph in the church. He carried, at his side, a pistol. He held it the way an older man holds a walking stick comfortably, without display. "You came," Vittorio smiled. "I confess, I was not entirely certain you would. You have a mother and a child. I have a mother and a child. Show them to me. In time. Come closer. Let me look at you." Alessandro did not move. "The lights," Vittorio said gently, "are for me to see you by, not for you to be seen dying by. If I had wanted you dead in the first minute, my boy, you would already be dead. Come, 2 steps." Alessandro took 2 steps. "Good." Vittorio's eyes flickered, briefly, toward the phone in his left hand. He was, Alessandro understood, waiting for a single small vibration from Point Judith. The word yes. The word that would tell him the mother and the child were on the water. The phone did not vibrate. Vittorio's eyes came back up. "You look like your father," he said. "I know. He also came into a room he should not have come into. Alone, without a gun, trusting the peace. He came into a car, not a room, and it was raining." Vittorio smiled again. This time the smile did not reach his eyes. At Point Judith, the door of the middle SUV was pulled open from the outside. A gloved hand reached in. Sophia, half crouched over Emma, went rigid until she saw Marco's face. Marco lifted her out first, careful of her ribs. 2 men had the driver on the ground already. The man in the passenger seat had gone for a phone. Marco's second team had shot the phone out of his hand, and then his kneecap out from under him. Emma was lifted out next, small arms locked around her mother's neck. Neither of them made a sound. "Come on," Marco said, low. "Come on, to the second van, fast." He carried Emma himself. Sophia walked beside him, one hand on his sleeve. In North Haven, Gino's team was in the front hall. 2 of Vittorio's men had already surrendered at the top of the basement stairs. One had chosen not to. He lay on the runner rug. The basement door was steel, exactly as reported, and locked from the inside, exactly as expected. Gino did not touch it. He set 2 men at it and went to search the ground floor for the phone Vittorio had used for the last 2 years. In Warwick, Vittorio glanced at his phone again. Still nothing. His eyes rose to Alessandro's face slowly. And, for the first time, something in his expression shifted. It was small. It was the expression of a man in a card game who had noticed, 1 beat late, that the deal was not what he had thought it was. "My boy," he said softly. "Yes. Where are my men on the roof, do you suppose?" "Alive," Alessandro said. "On their bellies. Zip-tied, being read their names." The pistol at Vittorio's side did not move. Not yet. "And my truck's on the road. Disabled. Drivers on the ground. And Point Judith. There is no boat leaving Point Judith tonight, Vittorio. There has not been a boat leaving Point Judith for the last 40 minutes. Sophia and Emma are in a van heading north on the interstate. Marco is holding Emma in his arms as we speak." Vittorio's mouth pressed into a line. "And my house in the hills, being cleared as we speak by 8 of my men. They have orders not to touch your basement door. I want to be the one who opens it." The old man closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. When he opened them, the amusement was gone. What was left in its place was the thing under it, the thing he had kept out of sight of his own soldiers for 30 years, the thing Alessandro's father had seen across a table in Boston in 1998 and had come home and said, quietly, to Alessandro's mother, "That man is not a man. That man is a hunger." Vittorio raised the pistol. Alessandro moved at the same instant. His right hand went inside the overcoat, not to the pocket where the watch lay, but to the small holster he had strapped, at 9 o'clock exactly, above his ribs, and had walked in wearing anyway, because he had never intended to walk in unarmed. His father's coat had always had a hidden seam. 2 shots cracked at almost the same time. Vittorio's round went past Alessandro's ear and struck sparks off a container behind him. Alessandro's round went into Vittorio's left shoulder. The old man staggered, spun, and dropped behind the rust-red container. Then, in the huge cold space of the warehouse, they began to fight. Not a duel, a hunt. 2 men moving low between the metal canyons of the containers, breathing quietly, listening for a footstep, firing only when a shape moved into a line of sight. A round rang off steel and buried itself in a beam. Another round tore a splinter from a wooden pallet 6 inches from Alessandro's head. He rolled behind a stack of pipes. He heard Vittorio's shoes shift on the concrete 4 containers away. In North Haven, the basement door held. A phone rang somewhere in the kitchen upstairs. Gino's man pocketed it. At Point Judith, the last remaining Moretti soldier in the pinned SUV, a boy of perhaps 23, who had been sitting on the floor of the middle car with a pistol against the small of Sophia's back until 3 minutes ago had, in the confusion of being pulled from the vehicle, slipped one hand free of his cuffs. He had not been searched a second time. There was a small holdout pistol strapped to his ankle. He drew it. He drew it just as Marco, 3 feet away, was turning with Emma in his arms. Marco did not see him. Sophia did. She saw the boy come up on one knee. She saw the small black shape in his hand rise, and she saw exactly where the barrel was pointing, not at Marco's back. Higher, at the small blonde head resting on Marco's shoulder. Sophia did not think. She threw herself across the space between them, arms out, all her body between the barrel and the child. The shot cracked flat and small in the open air. Sophia's whole body took the round. She hit Marco's shoulder like a blow from behind and dropped, boneless, to the asphalt. 2 of Marco's men fired at the same moment. The boy on his knee tumbled sideways and did not move. Emma, high in Marco's arms, twisted around, saw the shape on the ground below them, and screamed, "Mama, Mama, Mama!" She screamed the word the way a child screams, the only word she still owns. Marco dropped to one knee, still holding her, and reached out with his free hand. "Sophia, Sophia, look at me." Sophia's eyes were open. There was already blood beneath her, spreading. Her lips moved, but no sound came. 90 miles north, in a black metal canyon in Warwick, Alessandro pressed his shoulder against a container to steady his breath. He had lost sight of Vittorio for a moment. He listened. In his earpiece, over the low wind of the empty warehouse, Marco's voice came through closer than the wind, closer than the beating of his own heart, and broken in a way Alessandro had never heard from that man in 20 years. "Boss," Marco said. "Boss speak. Sophia's been hit." The words entered him and did something small and terrible to his hearing. For half a second the warehouse went silent. The wind through the roof, the bird in the rafters. The scrape of Vittorio's shoe on the concrete, 4 containers away. All of it fell out of the world. Half a second was enough. Vittorio fired from the shadow between 2 stacks. The round caught Alessandro high in the left shoulder, punched through the wool of his father's coat, spun him a quarter turn against the pipes. He did not go down. He went to one knee, put his right hand flat against the metal, and forced his own breath back into his chest. He did not answer Marco. Not yet. He could not trust his voice yet. The pain was surprisingly clean. Not the pain of grief. He knew what that pain was, and it was somewhere else, waiting for him. This pain was only a bullet. He had been shot once before, at 22, on a night no one talked about anymore, and he remembered now what he had learned then. You did not fight the pain. You used it. You gave it a job. Its job was to keep you awake. He gave it a job. He rose off the knee. Slowly, steadily, he set his shoulder blades against the pipes. He waited. He could hear Vittorio moving. The old man was hurt too, in the shoulder, the wrong shoulder for a right-handed shooter, but hurt. His breath was harder to hide now. He was working himself toward the far wall, away from the open floor, toward the small office cubicle at the back of the warehouse where, no doubt, he had placed a second phone he had believed he would not need. Alessandro moved. He moved along the container canyon with the low, patient walk of a man who did not have to be quick, only certain. His right arm was still good. His left hung heavy, warm, the coat sleeve going darker. He kept the pistol level. He kept his breathing shallow. He listened. Vittorio broke first. The old man came out from behind a container to make the run for the office. Alessandro was already there. He fired twice, low, deliberate. The first round went into Vittorio's thigh. The second took the pistol out of his hand. The gun skittered across the concrete under a stack of pallets. Vittorio staggered, caught himself against a container, and stayed on his feet. He was breathing hard now. His hair had come loose over one eye. "My boy," he said, and even now, even bleeding, he made it warm. Alessandro did not answer. He walked forward, pistol level, until he was 6 feet from the old man. "That was very well done," Vittorio said. He almost smiled. "Very well done. Your father. You do not speak of my father." Vittorio inclined his head, slowly, as if granting a small courtesy. At that moment, a small metal side door at the far end of the warehouse opened. The heels came in first, then Isabella. She was in a long, dark coat over a soft cream blouse. Her hair was down. She wore no jewelry except the ring Alessandro had put on her finger 4 months ago. She had come, Alessandro understood with a cold, quiet clarity, on Vittorio's instructions. She had come to watch him die. She had been promised that view. She had been told, no doubt, that it would take 12 minutes, and that afterward there would be champagne on a boat. She stopped inside the door. She saw the blood on Alessandro's coat. She saw Vittorio slumped against the container, favoring his leg, holding his ruined shoulder. She saw the pistol in Alessandro's hand. For a long moment she did not move. Then, very carefully, she stepped forward into the light. Alessandro. Her voice was low, soft. Exactly the voice she had used at breakfast tables and altar rehearsals and midnight conversations across pillows. She was already crying. She was skilled at it. 2 clean lines down her cheeks, one on each side, catching the halogen light. Alessandro, please. Please listen to me. He did not move. I did not want any of this, she said. She lifted her hands slowly, palms out, the way one lifts hands to a frightened animal. He made me. Do you understand? He made me. I was 17 when he first Alessandro. He owned my family. My father owed him. My father would have died in prison if I had not. I had no choice. I have never had a choice. Vittorio, against the container, closed his eyes for a long second. He did not contradict her. He did not confirm her. He simply took the words in the way a father takes the small, familiar lies of a daughter he has watched grow up. Something in his face, in that second, was almost tender. Alessandro saw that expression, and the last small human doubt in him closed. I loved you, Isabella said. Her voice broke, beautifully. I did. God help me, I did. In the beginning, when he sent me to your house, I did what he asked. But then I sat at your table. You put your coat over my shoulders that night in October. Do you remember? At the christening, it was cold and you put your coat over my shoulders and you did not even think about it. No man had ever. Alessandro, look at me. Please. Look at me. She took another step. He looked at her. He looked at her for a long moment. He looked at the dark coat and the small pale hands and the well-rehearsed tears. He looked at the ring on her finger, the ring his mother had never lived to see leave the jewelry box. He looked at the mouth he had kissed 400 times, that had told a man in a photograph, 4 nights ago, cleanly, when the man had asked her whether a 6-year-old child should live or die. Isabella, he said quietly. Yes, Alessandro. You could have been queen of this city. Her breath hitched. For a fraction of a second, real hope flashed in her face. That was the thing that broke him the last small distance. Even now, even here, she believed she could bargain. You could have walked into the church next spring in white lace, and you could have stood on the front steps of the cathedral, and you could have raised the child that Sophia is raising alone. You could have grown old with me at that table. You could have had Providence, and Federal Hill, and every honest thing my father ever built, and I would have loved you until I died an old man in a bed under a window. He shook his head, once, very slowly. You chose to be a weapon instead. The hope went out of her face. What was left was smaller and older than her years. She did not speak. She did not have anything else to say. Alessandro reached up with his good hand and pressed the transmit stud at his collar. Marco. Static. Then Marco's voice, still ragged, still holding a small girl who was still holding her mother's blood on her sleeve, 90 miles south. Boss. How is she? She is breathing. She is losing blood. The van is 10 minutes from the hospital. Emma is with her. Emma is with her. Alessandro closed his eyes for one heartbeat. Marco, send Rocco to the Warwick warehouse. Now, tell him to bring cuffs and one of our federal contacts. Isabella Marchetti is to be taken alive. She is not to be harmed. She is to be walked out of this building on her own feet and handed to the FBI at the Providence field office tonight, in front of witnesses, with photographs. The state will have her, not us. I want her in a federal courtroom under her own name, and I want the $8 million policy, and the offshore account, and the phone recordings, and Bay Harbor Consulting entered into public record. I want her end to be quiet, legal, and permanent. Yes, boss. Repeat. Alive. Unharmed. Federal. Not state. Public record. Good. He let go of the transmit stud. He looked at Isabella one last time. You will not die tonight, he said. You do not deserve the mercy of a bullet. You will live, Isabella, and every day you will live in a very small room, in a country that does not know your face, wearing clothes chosen by someone else, waiting for a letter that will never come. You will grow old there. That is what you chose the night you put a pill under the back of a spoon in my kitchen." She did not answer. She only looked at him, and for the first time since he had met her, there was nothing behind her eyes at all. He turned his back on her. He turned to Vittorio. The old man had straightened himself against the container while Alessandro had been speaking. He had used the seconds to breathe. He had used them to gather what he still had left. His shoulder was bad. His leg was worse. His right hand was empty. But his eyes were as clear and as awake as they had ever been in his life. 2 men, 2 families, 10 years of a silence that had never been silence at all. Alessandro let the pistol in his right hand drop, quietly, to the floor beside his boot. He kicked it back behind him, out of reach. He straightened. He drew his father's silver pocket watch from the inside pocket of his coat, opened it once to look at the small photograph inside, and laid it, closed, gently on top of a wooden crate to his left. Then he lifted his eyes to Vittorio Moretti. "Now," he said quietly, "we speak the way our fathers should have spoken." Vittorio Moretti pushed himself off the container. He stood on his good leg and let the ruined one take only as much weight as it had to. He drew from the inside of his own coat a slim, dark knife with a bone handle worn smooth by decades of use. Alessandro looked at the blade. He knew it. He had known it since he was 18. He had seen it in a police photograph in the folder his mother's lawyer had shown him 3 weeks after the funeral, a folder the state had refused to open. But that his mother's lawyer, God rest him, had opened anyway. A single, blurred photograph of a black-handled blade found in the gutter 30 yards from where his father's car had come to rest in the rain. The blade the state had lost from evidence the following spring. The blade whose absence Alessandro had never been able to prove was theft. He was looking at it now, because Marco, 6 weeks ago, in a raid Alessandro had not fully understood at the time, had found a small locked cedar box in the private study of Vittorio Moretti's stone house in North Haven. Marco had not opened the box. He had photographed it, replaced the lock, and left it as he had found it. Tonight, when Gino had taken the house, Gino had opened the box. Inside had been 3 items: a rosary, a woman's ring, and a bone-handled knife. Gino had radioed 20 minutes ago. "Boss, the knife is here." Alessandro had not answered him at the time. He was answering him now. "That knife," Alessandro said quietly, "does not belong to you." Vittorio smiled. Blood was on his teeth now. "It has been mine for 10 years. You stole it. I earned it." "Whose hand did you take it out of, old man?" "Your father's." "It went into him 3 times. Vittorio's voice was almost tender. The first, in the door of the car, when he thought he was still going to a christening. The second, in the belly, when he understood he was not. The third, under the ribs, when he began to speak your mother's name. Alessandro did not move. He begged, Alessandro. He did not beg. He did. He begged for the boy. He begged me not to touch the boy. That was the only word he spoke to me at the end. Your name, over and over. Alessandro, Alessandro, Alessandro." Alessandro drew a slow breath. He did not answer. He did not need to. Because at the same moment, from somewhere in the far dark of the warehouse, from the metal side door where Rocco had entered 90 seconds ago on Marco's order, a small object came sliding across the concrete. It slid past a pallet. It slid past a puddle of oil. It came to a stop 3 feet to Alessandro's right, spinning once and settling. A second knife, bone-handled, slim, the twin of the one in Vittorio's hand. Alessandro's father had owned a matched pair. One for himself, one that had been meant for his son on his 21st birthday, and had never been given. Rocco had brought the second knife from the estate. Alessandro bent, slowly, without taking his eyes from Vittorio, and picked it up. They came together in the space between the containers. There is nothing to romanticize in the fight between 2 wounded men with knives. It is short. It is ugly. It is decided by the small things, by whose feet are steadier, by whose breath is deeper, by whose grip has held a blade longer. Vittorio was faster than he should have been at 47, with a hole in his shoulder and a hole in his leg. He came in low, drove the point up under Alessandro's jaw. Alessandro turned his head a 1/4 inch. The blade sliced along his cheek, opening a clean red line from ear to mouth. He did not feel it. He was not in a body anymore. He was inside a 10-year silence that had finally been given a voice. He drove his own blade downward, into the meat of Vittorio's forearm, and twisted. Vittorio's knife dropped. Alessandro did not let him bend for it. He caught the old man by the collar of the black overcoat, spun him hard against the container, and put the point of his own blade, his father's blade, under Vittorio's ribs. He held it there. Vittorio's breath was ragged now. His eyes, wide and pale in the halogen light, met Alessandro's. "Do it, boy," he said. There was no fear in the voice. There was, perhaps, something like relief. "Do it, or you are your father's ghost, and not his son." Alessandro looked into his eyes. "My father did not beg. He did. He did not." He leaned in. "But if he had," he said, very quietly, "he would have begged for the man you are about to be. Alone. In a warehouse. Under a knife you took from him." He drove the blade home. Vittorio's breath left him in one long, surprised sigh, as if he had at last been shown the trick of a coin he had watched a magician perform for 30 years. His hands opened. His head dropped forward once, against Alessandro's chest, in a movement that could almost, from a distance, have been mistaken for an embrace. Alessandro held him there for the length of 2 heartbeats. Then he stepped back. The old man slid down the container to the floor. He did not move again. The Moretti Empire, which had begun in a room in Sicily in 1939, and had crossed an ocean, and had bought a marina, and had rented a warehouse, and had put a small white bottle in a woman's handbag, ended on the concrete of Post Road in Warwick, Rhode Island, at 14 minutes past 9 on a Tuesday night in October. Alessandro did not celebrate. He did not spit. He did not curse. He did not look for a witness. He turned. He walked to the wooden crate. He picked up his father's silver pocket watch, closed his fingers around it once, and slid it back into the inside pocket of his coat. Over his heart, where the blood from the wound in his shoulder was already beginning to soak through the wool, he walked to Isabella. She had not moved. She was still standing near the small side door with 2 of Rocco's men now behind her, her wrists already bound behind her back, her face empty. He did not speak to her. He walked past her without looking. He walked out into the cold October night. Rocco was waiting by the car, the engine running. "Rhode Island Hospital," Alessandro said. "Emergency entrance. Do not stop for lights. Do not stop for anyone. Call Enzo on the way. Tell him I am coming in and to meet me at the door. Boss." "Your shoulder drive, Rocco." They drove. 10 miles later, Rocco said quietly, "Boss, Enzo says she is in surgery. She has been in surgery since 8 minutes past 9. He says it is bad. He says she took the round very high. He says she is alive." Alessandro closed his eyes for one breath. "And Emma is in the corridor outside the surgery. Enzo tried to have a nurse take her to the family room. She would not move. She is sitting on the floor with her back against the wall. She is waiting." Alessandro did not open his eyes. Faster. They came into Providence at 40 minutes past 9. The city was still just the city. People were walking home from restaurants on Wickenden Street. A bus turned onto Point. No one on that street knew that in a warehouse behind Post Road, a war that had been quietly killing New England for 30 years had just ended. No one would know for a long time. That was how Alessandro wanted it. Rocco pulled up at the emergency doors of Rhode Island Hospital. Alessandro got out. He did not close the door. He walked in. The lobby was bright and cold and smelled of the false clean of hospitals. A nurse looked up from a desk. Enzo was already there, in his gray overcoat, moving toward him fast, one hand out. "Alessandro, where is she?" "3rd floor, surgical corridor. She is still under. I will take you up." "Alessandro, your face, your shoulder, Enzo." "Where?" Enzo turned. Together they walked, fast, through the doors, past the desk, into the elevator. The doors slid shut. The floor buttons lit. Alessandro looked at his own reflection in the steel and did not know the man he saw. The cut along his cheek was still bleeding. The left shoulder of his father's coat was dark and heavy. The silver pocket watch pressed against his ribs, warm as a small living thing. The doors opened on the 3rd floor. He stepped out, halfway down the long, quiet corridor, on the pale linoleum floor, with her back against the wall between 2 closed doors, and her small legs folded under her. A little girl was sitting. She was wearing a hospital-issued cardigan, 2 sizes too big, that a nurse had draped over her shoulders. Her hair was loose. There was blood on her sleeve that was not her own. Her eyes were fixed on the swinging doors at the far end of the corridor, the doors behind which her mother lay under a light, and she was not crying. She was too tired to cry. She was only waiting. In her lap, held tight against her chest with both small arms, was a cloth doll, Rosie. Someone had brought Rosie to her, someone who had understood. At the sound of the elevator, she turned her head. She saw him. She saw the cut on his cheek. She saw the dark stain on the coat. She saw that he had come. exactly the way he had promised, in exactly the shape a man could come from a place a man had had to go. Her small chin trembled once. She did not run to him. She was too tired. She only lifted both arms toward him from the floor, still holding Rosie, and waited for him to cover the distance the rest of the way. Sophia lived. The surgeons worked for almost 7 hours that night. The round had traveled very high, very close to the great vessels above the heart, and there was a moment near 4 in the morning when a young resident stepped out into the corridor and told Alessandro, gently, that he should prepare himself. Alessandro did not answer. He only sat down beside the small girl on the linoleum floor, put his good arm around her shoulders, and stayed. Emma did not cry then either. She simply leaned her head against his side, held Rosie a little tighter, and waited with him. Somewhere in the 5th hour, without meaning to, she fell asleep against his ribs. At 20 minutes past 6 in the morning, the surgeon came out and told them, quietly, that Sophia was going to live. Alessandro closed his eyes. He did not thank the surgeon out loud. He only bent his head to the small warm weight against his side and pressed his lips once, very lightly, to the top of Emma's hair. The weeks that followed were long and slow and gentle in the way that recovery is always gentle. Sophia came home to the Romano estate at the end of the 2nd week. Alessandro carried her over the threshold himself, one careful step at a time, because she was still too tired to walk far, and because he had promised her, in a hospital room 3 days before, that no one else in this world would carry her again. He gave her the big south-facing bedroom on the 2nd floor, with the tall windows that caught the winter light. He gave Emma the small blue room next to it, with a shelf just her height for Rosie to sit on. He moved his own bed and his own study to the other side of the house, so that Sophia would rest without knowing how often. In the first 2 weeks, he stood outside her door at 3 in the morning just to listen to her breathing. Enzo Ferrante came every day for a month. He changed dressings. He watched her count of breaths. He watched her color. On the 21st day, he closed his bag and said, "She is out of the woods, Alessandro. She will be tired for months. She will not be tired forever." Alessandro did not answer. He only walked Enzo to the door, took the old man's hand in both of his own, and held it, while Sophia healed. The world outside the estate changed, quietly, the way real change happens. The Moretti Empire, without a head, without a knife, without a warehouse, without a marina, did not fall in a single day. It fell in 90 of them. The docks in New Haven came under Romano flags without a shot fired. The cement company was sold to a legitimate buyer in Hartford. The judge in Vittorio's pocket resigned quietly for reasons of health. The 2 restaurants stayed open under new ownership and better wages. And of all the money that came into Alessandro's hands from the empire he had just inherited, the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the safe boxes in 3 banks in 3 cities, the greater part did not stay in Romano hands at all. He built a fund in his father's name for the widows of firefighters and policemen in Rhode Island. He built a scholarship in his mother's name for the daughters of women who cleaned houses for a living. He built a shelter in the Silver Lake neighborhood for mothers who had left men they should never have married. He gave, quietly, without press releases, without plaques, without his name on any wall. Marco kept the books. Enzo signed off on the medical charities. A priest in Federal Hill who had known Alessandro since he was 7 years old signed off on the rest. The transformation was not clean. Empires do not become gardens in a season. But it began. And every man in the Romano family, from the oldest lieutenant to the youngest driver, understood, without being told, that this was the direction the family would move for as long as this man let it. Isabella Marchetti went, in the end, exactly where Alessandro had promised her she would go. Federal custody, a federal courtroom, a federal sentence, 51 years, without parole, in a facility in West Virginia. The papers ran her photograph for 3 days and then, as papers do, forgot her. Alessandro did not go to her sentencing. He did not need to see the door close. Winter came late to Providence that year. The first snow did not fall until the 17th of December. It fell all afternoon in soft, unhurried flakes, the kind that catch on eyelashes and stay. And by evening, Federal Hill was pale and quiet under a light that did not come from any street lamp. Inside the Romano estate, the great front hall glowed. Alessandro had asked for candles that night. Real candles, not the electric ones. He had asked for the long windows to be uncovered. He had asked for the doors of the hall to be opened to every man and woman who worked in that house, and every soldier of the family who had ever served his father or himself, and every neighbor on the block who wanted to come. Nearly 90 people came. They stood in a wide, quiet ring around the hall, holding cups of hot wine and coffee, murmuring. At the head of the hall, Sophia stood in a soft blue dress, the color of a winter morning. She still walked a little carefully. She still tired by evening, but she stood straight, and her long brown hair was loose over her shoulders the way Alessandro liked it best, and she was watching him with a small, uncertain smile, because she did not know yet what he was about to do. Emma stood beside her mother. She was in a white dress and a white cardigan. She held Rosie against her chest with both arms, the way she had always held Rosie, and she was watching Alessandro too, but with a different expression, because Emma, being Emma, had already guessed. Alessandro crossed the hall. He came to a stop in front of them, in front of every man and woman in that room. He did not speak yet. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat, over his heart, and he drew out the silver pocket watch of his father. He held it up. The room went quiet. He knelt down, slowly, on one knee, on the polished wood floor of the great hall. He opened the watch. Inside, in place of the photograph that had rested there for 39 years, the photograph he had moved, gently, to a frame on the mantel of his study 3 weeks ago there was, now, a small gold band, his mother's wedding ring, the ring he had lifted, 1 week ago, from the velvet-lined drawer of the safe in his father's study, where it had waited, patient, for 22 years. "Sophia," he said. His voice did not shake. He had made it not shake. He had practiced this. "When you first came into this house, 2 years ago, I did not see you. I am ashamed of that. I was a man who had built high walls around himself, and I thought the walls were the reason I was still alive. I did not know, then, that the reason I was still alive was that a mother and a child would one day walk through those walls with soup, and a whisper, and a doll and change every wall I had ever built." He drew a breath. "You did not choose me because I am rich. Emma did not choose me because I am powerful. You chose me because I listened when it mattered, and Emma chose me because I believed her when it mattered. That is a kind of love money cannot buy, and I have learned, this year, that money cannot buy the only things worth having." He looked up at her. "I do not ask you to be my wife because I need a wife. I ask you because in every hour I have spent in your company, in this house and outside of it, I have become a better man than I was in the hour before it. I ask you because Emma is the only child I have ever loved. I ask you because when the world showed me who was truly on my side, it was the two of you." His hand tightened, just once, on the watch. "Sophia Bennett, will you marry me?" Sophia did not answer with a word at first. She could not. 2 tears moved down her cheeks and stopped at the corner of her mouth, and her hands rose slowly and covered her face for a moment. And when she lowered them, she was smiling in the way a woman smiles only 2 or 3 times in a life. "Yes," she said quietly. "Yes, Alessandro, I will." He rose. He took the small gold ring from the watch, and he slid it onto her finger. It fit exactly. He had known it would. Emma waited exactly 1 heartbeat. Then she ran. She ran across the hall in her white dress with Rosie clutched to her chest, and she threw her small arms around both of them at once, so that when she hugged them, Rosie was pressed between the 3 of them like a small, warm heart. And Alessandro laughed for the first time in a very long time, and Sophia bent down and kissed the top of Emma's hair, and every man and woman in the great hall, tough men, quiet men, women who had worked in that house for decades, began to clap. Outside the tall windows, the snow was still falling on Federal Hill. Inside, a family stood together in the candlelight, and a small girl held on to both of them, and a cloth doll with a stitched mouth smiled at nothing, exactly the way she had always smiled. Dear friends, this is where our story comes to rest, and before we say goodbye, let us sit with what this story has quietly tried to give us. Alessandro Romano was one of the most powerful men in his city. He had money most people cannot imagine. He had soldiers who would die for him. He had walls, and gates, and cameras, and men at every door. And yet the person who saved his life was a 6-year-old girl in a plain gray dress, holding a cloth doll her mother had sewn by hand. There is a lesson in that we should not walk past too quickly. The people who try to buy your silence with money are almost never the people who love you. The people who try to buy your trust with beauty and charm and perfect words are almost never the people who will stand between you and a bullet. Real love does not speak the loudest at the table. Real love brings soup at 10:30 at night, without being asked. Real love whispers the truth even when the truth is dangerous. Real love steps in front of a gun for a child that is not even their own. A family is not built on blood alone. A family is built on the quiet, daily choice to protect one another, to tell one another the truth, to stand at one another's door at 3 in the morning without needing to be asked. The one who tries to buy you will always lose to the one who chooses to be loyal to you. If this story touched something inside you tonight, we would love it if you would take a small moment to click the like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel so we can meet again tomorrow with another story straight from the heart. And in the comments below, we would love to hear from you. Ask yourself, gently, who in your own life is the person who has quietly protected you all along without asking for anything in return? Who is the person who has told you the truth when it would have been easier to lie? Who is the person you should say thank you to tonight before you sleep? Tell us their name. Tell us their story. Let us honor them together in the comments so that every reader who scrolls past can be reminded that real love, real loyalty, and real family still exist in this world. Thank you for spending this hour of your life with us. We do not take that gift lightly. From all of us here, we wish you good health, a peaceful heart, and a home filled with the kind of people who would bring you soup at 10:30 at night without ever being asked. Take care of yourself, take care of the ones who love you, and we will see you again, very soon, in our next story. Until then, goodbye, dear friend, and may peace walk with you.